Bullshit, I can't hear you. Sound off like you got a pair.
Can't hear me because I'm still setting up. Goofball. What's up, Gumby?
Incoming transmission from E_Boiler.
Hey, what's up, Euler? What's going on, my brother? What are you doing? Oh, shoot. I didn't change the stream name. Tonight's a news night. We got a lot of news to cover. Change some stuff. And that is the news, Austin. Yes. We got a lot of news to cover because we haven't done the news since Black Hat and DEF CON happened. We're going to be doing hacker news. I remember that assignment, Euler, and the reason it took me a little longer than I had originally anticipated, but I didn't over-engineer it, but I put a lot of effort into that. Hey, Hugh, what's up, man? Yeah, Google is supposed to be releasing some of their new stuff tomorrow. Good timing, actually, because when I tripped in Seattle, I actually busted my phone screen. I thought I had a screen protector on my phone. It's a Pixel 6. Nope. Turns out I just busted the screen up. So I'm hoping when they release the Pixel 10, then the Pixel 9 will come down in price. I'll just buy that. Feels like switching. Actually, I ignited a huge nerd fight today at work by asking in our company chat if I should consider switching to an iPhone since my phone got busted. And oh, it was just massive nerd fight. How rude. How rude of it. All right, I think I've got everything set up here. The Google event is coming up tomorrow, and then the Apple event is in about 20 days afterwards, roughly. That's about right, because Apple's always that kid that wants to copy your homework. It's almost time. Bust open the Jocko. Let's get it started. Let's get it started. What's up, everybody? I hope everyone's having a fantastic Taco Tuesday. By the way, in the near future, next couple of weeks, Newsstream will be moving to Monday night. So, because I'm going to have something I got to take care of on Tuesdays, and so we'll start switching it over to Monday here fairly soon. I don't know the exact day, but in the next couple of weeks. Let me see, what was I looking at today? Yeah, lots of stuff in the news today, because lots of Black Hat and DEF CON stuff came out. So we have no limit on all the fun stuff. What's funny is, usually about this time of year, the news cycle actually starts kind of trickling down. So really about midsummer, news and business for around offensive security starts kind of ticking down a little bit until, and it bottoms out right at Black Hat and DEF CON. And then it just starts very rapidly building up until about December into January. And then it just kind of usually stays steady state there until about summer. And then it starts trickling down. Because you got people wondering, okay, what's going to happen at Black Hat and DEF CON? Then they got to spend their end of year budget. So you see that cycle pretty regularly. I saw that cycle consistently over my 7-year pen testing career. Yeah, it's been 7 years I've been in offensive security. So a lot of fun with that. Let's see. What do we got up here? What's the first thing? I think we actually already covered this one, but I wanted to cover it again real quick. This was a malicious extension for the Cursor IDE, and what these guys were doing was essentially coming in and gaming the system. So they would make a legitimate looking clone of a popular plugin for Cursor, and then they would go through and they would spam it to get it way up in the downloads, like millions of downloads. So they would bot it up, and then people would install it, and what it was actually doing in the background was draining people's crypto wallets. So, a lot of fun there. Thankfully, the guy who kind of brought this to attention, we don't know what the full impact is, right? But the damage was only a few $100s in ETH, because of basically only using hot wallets for testing and stuff like that. Actually, if I remember right, this was specifically a plugin targeting Selenium development, which is the coding language you use to make Ethereum smart contracts. Yeah, I think that was the case here. Forensic process. Does he say what it was? Okay, actually, I did see this last time. Couple of red flags. The publisher was different. Also, there was no GitHub repo linked to it. But they could also have a GitHub repo linked and didn't be shipping and uploading a different version of it. So that is a red flag if it's missing, but it's not necessarily a green flag if it's there. High downloads with no reviews. Because like I said, they were botting the downloads way up in there. So interesting little one. We've covered it before. I just wanted to talk about it again. Let's see. This was one, though, I'm actually very keen to cover. APT down. So someone got access to an alleged North Korea APT workstation and their virtual private server, and was kind enough to dump all the files in it. So I wanted to take a look at this one and see what they've got going on here. It's all text. Let's see. Dear Kim Sucky, you are no hacker. Let's see. This article analyzes the dump of data from an APT's workstation. In particular, the data and source code retrieved from the workstation belonging to the threat actor actively targeting organizations in South Korea and Taiwan. So we believe this to be a member of North Korea's Kim Sucky group. Kim Sucky is a North Korean state actor, state-backed advanced persistent threat that targets think tanks, industry, nuclear power operators, and government for espionage purposes. It is being designated, it's being designated pursuant to EO 13687 for being an agency, instrumentality, or a controlled entity of the government of North Korea. What is this? EO 1387. Oh, this was an executive order. Got it. And this was an EO back from Obama's days. Wow. So this was like 10 years ago. So we're going to refer to this particular member as Kim for the sake of the article. Kim is not your friend. The dump includes many of Kim Sucky's backdoors and their tools, as well as the internal documentation. So it shows a glimpse of how openly Kim Sucky cooperates with other Chinese APTs and shares their tools and techniques. So some of the tools are already known to the community. You may have seen their scans and found their server-side artifacts and implants. But now you should see their clients and documentations, passwords, and source codes. Nice. Nice. As a freebie, we also give you a backup of their VPS that they had used for spear phishing. Oh, beautiful. Let's see. So they have links to the dumps up in a couple of Onion sites. Excellent. Hey, Techie Nut, thanks for coming online. Welcome in, and happy Tuesday, everybody. I don't have any good stories today. It was a pretty meh day today. I'm working on a pen test for a client. We're sorting out some access issues. Did a little bit of this, little of that. Nothing really outrageous today. It was a pretty chill day. Let's see. I'm going to skip over his little diatribe here about Kim Sucky is no hacker. Let's see. So this paragraph gives a short overview of the dumps and then takes a closer look at the three initial findings. Logs showing an attack against Defense Counterintelligence Command, access to the South Korea Ministry of Foreign Affairs, access to internal South Korean government network, and many more files. Yay. So first dump, there's a screenshot of the desktop, a Linux dev VM running Deepin 20.9, listing all the files found, about 20,000 entries in Brave and Chrome history revealing many email addresses, sites Kim visited and tools Kim downloaded, all Chrome extensions such as spoofing the user agent, Proxy Switchy Omega. Okay, they've got good taste in that. That's a good, I like Proxy Switchy Omega. And a cookie editor. So some file with a Korean name is a manual on how to operate one of their backdoors. So there's also a very official sounding statement which was translated saying it is forbidden to use the backdoor outside of its designated use. Nice. So they had a whole bunch of passwords stored in a doc file, extra secure, love it, and emails to their VPS, or I'm sorry, emails and passwords to the VPS. Perfect. Let's see, what do we got in the second dump here? Server was used for, this is for the spear phishing server. Noticeable are SSL certificates and auth logs and source code for the spear phishing attacks, and discussed further. Awesome. Let's see what else I've got in here. So given the format of some of these files, there's probably a dump from a GitHub repository, which appears to be part of an email server. So the source code contains multiple references to government domains. And so it appears that Kim maintains access to internal South Korean government network systems. This is a project named Anara Auto, which contains several interesting files. Project appears to be tools for querying internal government servers. Ooh, interesting. So I got a little bit of, looks like Python here going on. A little bit of script action. So this host, anora9.sas gcloud go kr, is not accessible from the public internet. However, the domain appears in some documents mentioned on the internal government portal. Let's see. So we had his origination IP is in Singapore. 13th of June, Kim registered webcloudtechnotice.com, and I believe this was in preparation for another spear phishing attack. There are certs provided, a certificate and private key for another domain, which is another South Korea telecom. Man, I was all excited about this, but this is very like dry. This is really more for the threat intel guys to download. I was looking so forward to this dump too. Let's see. Trainer versus, let's see. So phishing tool exposes an HTTPS website under the domain similar to the victim knows and trusts. Victims at this web, let's see, dc.mil.kr are then sent a link to the spear phishing site. The attacker then hopes that the victim will enter their login credentials. Yeah, pretty much. So the final redirection of the victim is away from the phishing site to a URI on the legitimate site. It's a URI that always throws a login error. So this is a targeted attack. Benefit of this trick is that the victim will see an error from the mil.kr, the actual site. So the difference was, I don't think he listed the actual domain. No, he did. So even though actually that's a pretty cool idea. So even though the credentials got submitted, they basically forward you over to a different web server where it captures it and then just dumps it out of there. Oh, what is this? Tomcat remote kernel backdoor. So this is a kernel of a remote backdoor. It allows an attacker to access a host remotely and hide. The drop contains a client, server-side, LKM, and a userland backdoor. Now, what he's using with Tomcat, though. So the client communicates with a victim server over a direct TCP connection. LKM sniffs for any TCP connection that matches a specific TCP sequence and IP ID combination. The LKM communicates via the PCI card with its companion on the master C backdoor. Huh, that's very interesting. I like that they're using, hey, they're looking for a particular TCP sequence. That's actually really, it's pretty slick for like a backdoor trigger. Let's see. What else we got here? What else they doing? Let's see. They had a private Cobalt Strike beacon, looks like. So it's a custom Cobalt Strike C2 beacon. The source code was being worked on using IntelliJ IDE. It contains pointers to open files and positions in those files, as well as recent projects. So the config.cpp file contains 2 Cobalt Strike config binary blobs. So those are valid blobs that can be parsed with the Cobalt Strike parser script. Nice. By the way, if you didn't know about that, so if you are ever doing incident response and you come across a Cobalt Strike beacon in there, you can use the Cobalt Strike parser to kind of bring out a lot of that info in there. So because it has, the C2 agent has to have certain information to know where to call home. It's got to know a protocol, it's got to know a port, sleep time is, how long does it wake between check-ins, and a couple other pieces of information. So like, here's the C2 server, right? Boop, right there. And then what agent to use, because it's imitating HTTP right here. Very cool. Ooh, what is this? Android Toy Box. So Kim is heavily working on Toy Box for Android, so it seems to have diverged from Toy Box's official GitHub repo near a particular commit. We've not investigated what modifications were happening. Ah, man. What is Toy Box? Hold on. Android Toy Box. I'm curious, because I've never heard of this. Oh, Toy Box is basically a command line utility for Android. It combines many common Linux command line utilities together into a single BSD license executable. Yeah, it's a little bit like BusyBox in a sense. Okay, I got it now. Let's see. It looks like they got an Avanti backdoor, or like not a backdoor, but like some kind of rootkit they can install. Yeah, Hydrogen. That's exactly. As soon as I read it, I was like, I got where they got the name from. Like, it's just BusyBox. I mean, I wouldn't say just BusyBox, but they're doing a play on the name. Let's see. So what is this Avanti control or root rot? Let's see. So the source code of a client to access a publicly known backdoor. So in 2017, Synactive mistakenly identified the backdoor as a vulnerability. It was later found that it was indeed an implant left behind by the threat actor, and they named it root rot. This request will reply with hit if the backdoor is running. So we do a little bit of a quick check here. Interesting. So something that Avanti categorized as a vulnerability was actually a backdoor artifact that they had left. And this was in 2017. Like I said, so the executive order that we referenced earlier, that was from 2015. So that was at the end of Obama's term. Let's see. There's another Avanti exploit, possibly for a couple different CVEs. Mandiant recently discovered the payload in the wild and the attributes the activity to UNC 5221, so a suspected China Nexus espionage actor. Interesting. What else do we have in here that's interesting? I was hoping this would be a lot more of a breakdown. This is like super to the point. This is almost bullet point style. Operation Covert Stalker. So Operation Covert Stalker is the name given by OnLab to a month-long spear phishing campaign conducted by North Korea against individuals like journalists, researchers, and politicians, and organizations in South Korea. So the web server configuration for a domain associated with this attack was found on the threat actor's systems. Oh. Interesting. That's some pretty damning attribution. Well, to give them the benefit of the doubt, which I doubt it is, they also could have just made like compromise somebody else to get it, but it seems to kind of fit with everything. They had some more stolen certificates, similar targets. All right. Man, I was really looking forward to this article too. I didn't have time to proofread the articles today, but man, it's interesting stuff. It's just it's not broken down for reading. It's more like this is more like a threat intel brief. Very cool stuff though. Now this is a trend that I'm not super excited about. Hyundai wants. Do you want cybersecurity car locks? That'll be £49, please. And in fact, we just saw something like this with Volvo as well. Volvo wants to handicap your car and reduce its performance unless you pay a monthly subscription fee. So you can just eat all of my ass. Hyundai's charging customers £49 or $66 for a security upgrade to prevent thieves from bypassing its car locks. That's even worse. This one's not even the subscription. I mean, the subscription is pretty bad, but this one, you're charging for patches for your shitty code. Get out of here. The offer is available on the to Ioniq 5 owners who are part of the small cohort of unfortunate souls vulnerable to the spat of car thefts affecting various electronic vehicles in Britain. So recently, evolving security threats, including the use of unauthorized electronic devices to bypass vehicle locking systems, have become more prevalent in the UK. This is an industry-wide issue, and Hyundai is providing appropriate responses in line with industry practices. I don't know anybody who charges for security updates, except for Microsoft, and after it's like 20 years old. They're the only ones I know that do that. Let's see. UK motorists have been complaining about such crabs for years. The government announced an intent earlier this year to ban keyless repeaters and signal jammers. Yeah, because that'll stop the bad guys. Which are thought to be linked to around 40% of the vehicle thefts in England and Wales. So among the devices available to motoring miscreants is a piece of kit that first serviced in 2020, comes preloaded with a signal needed to hijack a Hyundai, Kia, Mitsubishi, Nissan, and Genesis cars. So criminals have used these to wreak havoc for more than 5 years, though similar gadgets have been available for much longer. Yeah, this isn't new tech, it's just people are making it more accessible. West Yorkshire police arrested a car nicking gang. Nicking is stealing for all my Ameritrashers like me. Gang back in 2021 and describing the device they used as a Game Boy-like gizmo worth around £20,000. Man, I mean, you get a lot of money for stealing cars. That makes sense. The hardware is reportedly cobbled together by hackers using tech from a Bulgarian outfit, SOS Auto Keys, which was then plugged into the housing of an old Game Boy Color and sold to criminals. Oh, that's funny. Although that's kind of disrespectful to the old Game Boys. Those are antiques now. They're beautiful. Don't go just tearing them apart. Let's see. The devices were costly, but gave criminals the tools to unlock and steal cars within seconds, promising a return on investment with just a few thefts. In the case investigated by the West Yorkshire police, the three-man gang was linked to 5 vehicle thefts with a combined value of about £180,000, or about to be $242,000. Ooh. They should also make car theft a crime. I know, right? That will stop it. Because everybody knows as soon as you outlaw something, it just immediately stops, right? All we have to do is just outlaw breaking the law. Boom. Meta problem solved. Let's see. It's also published a video showing how quickly and easy it is for the trio to be able to drive over the victim's car, as well as a depiction of the Game Boy-like device itself. Well, let's go take a look at this video. This is a video recovered from the guy's phone. There you go. All right. Let's see how quickly they can get this done. You're on the clock. Can you be gone in 60 seconds? Come on, guys. Come on. You're making Nicolas Cage sad right now. Yeah, you have failed Nicolas Cage, and he is very sad at the moment. But that is pretty quick. Not gonna lie to you, that's awesome. I mean, it's not awesome, but I mean, I get it. It sucks having your car stolen. Let's see. So these gadgets played a role in the recent incident in March 2025, with one Ioniq 5 customer threatening Hyundai with legal action after their vehicle was stolen using one of these devices. The customer said that they had put in place a secondary mobilizer or perhaps a steering lock if they had known of the problem. So according to The Guardian, police recovered Elliot Ingram's Ioniq 5 after it was stolen, but the customer sought to cancel the lease and seek compensation from Hyundai. The security system has been completely blown open so anyone can attack it, Ingram told the newspaper. It's no longer fit for purpose. No, pretty much. Let's see, Hyundai's website update, which announced the optional security upgrade, said, all vehicles produced by Hyundai are developed and certified in accordance with all applicable security and regulatory standards in place at the time of production and sale, including the applied security systems installed. As part of the company's commitment to supporting our customers, we are able to offer a subsidized software and hardware upgrade for a customer contribution of £49. Okay, they might have buried the lead on this. What was this? Okay, so they just left it like, hey, do you want the car locks? It's £49. I hate when articles do this because what they're doing is they're making it sound like it's a software patch. And even I fell for it. I said it in the beginning that, hey, we're going to charge you $49 for the software patch. Apparently, there's a hardware upgrade component. Now, apparently that's, I mean, in my opinion, that doesn't completely negate it, but I get it more now. It's like why they're charging for it. Because there actually is a hardware update. Let's see. The Register asked Hyundai's UK publicity team why the update isn't being provided free of charge, what the upgrade entails, and how much the subsidized price the caremaker was footing for the customers, but it did not respond. Okay. Although, I get it a little bit more now, but still, like, hey, you made a crappy product and then you want to charge people to fix it. That does kind of suck. I still, definitely not as bad as the Volvo thing. Here, if y'all hadn't seen this, Volvo Performance Subscription. Let's see if I can find it. Let's see if we can find this. See if I can find it. Charging monthly subscription for. Let's see if we can find this. Where was the article? Damn it. Oh well. But essentially, Volvo was doing something like that where, hey, you'll get a performance update if you pay us, I think it was like $22 a month. I was like, that's some bullshit, man. It really is. I'm tired of everything being, hey, here's a monthly charge for everything. All right. Enough of the fun ones. Let's see what else we got here. This one actually looks pretty cool. I'm curious about this too. Basically, manipulating images of CCD cameras with electromagnetic interference. But the kicker to this is you got to be a little bit close to it. You got to be within like 1 meter, 3 feet. 3 feet. 3 feet. Let's see what they've got for this one. They call this Ghost Shot. So attackers can manipulate computer vision systems by injecting monochrome or color images, leading to erroneous decision making. Oh, interesting. So the idea here is like, hey, here's our original, and then post-attack, maybe we make this like a QR code or something. That's kind of interesting. Oh, let's see. CCD cameras are critical in professional and scientific applications where high-quality image data are required, and the reliability of the captured image forms the basis of a trustworthy computer vision system. Previous work shows the feasibility of using intentional electromagnetic interference to inject unnoticed images into CCD cameras. So in this work, we've designed an attack to enhance the capability called Ghost Shot that can inject any grayscale or color image into a CCD camera under normal light conditions within IMEI. So this was intentional electromagnetic interference. So we conduct a schematic analysis of the causality of the IMEI effect on the shapes, brightness, and colors of the injected image, and achieve effective control of the injected pattern through amplitude phase modulation. Dude, that's pretty sick. So we demonstrate the potential impact of Ghost Shot on medical diagnosis. Okay, that's a bit of a weird one. But anyway, fire detection and QR code scanning and object detection to find that falsified images can successfully mislead computer vision systems. Now, the main thing I would think is, hey, could you just inject an image of blank? Like, could you just blank it out to basically hide yourself from it? Let's see. No, Austin, what is this? Discord updated with handoff support. Let me see what this. Let's see. Discord messaging app has been updated with handoff support for an improved cross-platform experience for the iPhone, iPad, and Mac. So if you're on Discord, if you're in a Discord channel on one device and switch to a different device, you'll now see Discord app up as a recommended app in the dock or the app switcher. Oh, okay. Gotcha. Yeah. As much as I hate to say it, I think that's kind of already been the way in, maybe not in Android, but I mean, it's fairly interesting. Good old Discord. Always the Electron app of choice. Let's see. So let me look at this. Specifically, we wonder if it's feasible to inject arbitrary patterns into an image captured by a camera in any ambient light condition. So, for example, like they showed up here in Figure 1, can interference create a non-existing fire pattern or a textured QR code in the camera's output? Let's see. So, how did they kind of approach this? I'm curious. Actually, this is what I wanted, because I'm not totally familiar with CCDs. So a typical CCD imaging system primarily comprises the following three components: the image sensor, the analog front end, and a digital back end. So the CCD image sensor is the central element of an imaging system, go figure, playing a critical role in the photoelectric conversion, the storage and transfer of signal charges, and the measurement of amplification of those charges. Photo convergence and charge storage. So the photodiode is responsible for converting incident light into the signal charge. Due to the photoelectric effect, the light exposure causes electrons to escape atomic confines and become free charges. Okay, makes sense? Hydrogen, thanks for coming online, man. Super appreciate that, and hope you're having a fantastic Tuesday. Let's see. I was wondering if this was different from a MOS capacitor, but I guess it is. So the basic components of the CCD is the MOS capacitor, consisting of metal electrodes and oxide film and semiconductors. So by applying a positive charge to the metal electrode, carrier holes in the P-type silicon are depleted, creating a registered region on the metal oxide. Okay. Yeah. So essentially what they've done is they've kind of just split it up like this, and they're basically seeing where the electrons pop off. Let's see. So the analog front end is a set of analog circuitry that conditions and digitizes the analog signal from the image sensor. So AFE consists of the correlated double sampling CDS circuitry, back level adjust circuitry, analog to digital conversion. Okay. So correlated double sampling, it takes the raw output signal from the CCD image, and sensor generally contains noise of multiple forms, including thermal noise, reset noise, and dark current noise. I don't know what that is, but it sounds killer. The dark current. The CDS is the most commonly used circuit for noise reduction in AFE. What was AFE again? Analog front end. So the CDS circuit samples the reset level of the video level within 1 pixel period. Okay. All right. That's very cool, but now I want to see where they're actually coming with this and what ideas they've had. This is a lot of math, and I haven't done math like this in a long time. Interesting. So what are we talking about here? So they're talking about some of the spacing between, like, you get these line artifacts up here. These, and like where they kind of, the inference kind of comes in, but depending on, I think, what level of interference they're giving it, or what frequency they're sending it. Interesting. Okay. So now they're talking about color modulation in here. So how can we affect that? Oh, as interesting as this, I want to get to just the results. I want to see how they were actually managing this. So upon acquiring the image to inject, the initial step involves pre-processing, which encompasses scaling and padding, brightness normalization, color and contrast adjustments, and noise reduction. So to ensure the injected image appears in its entirety and at the appropriate size within the target camera's field of view, the target image should be suitably scaled to slightly smaller than the resolution of the target image sensor. So the specific scaling ratio must be determined further based on the attack scenario and the target. So I'd say, realistically, if you're going to use this in an offensive scenario, it'd almost be like you had to go get one of those cameras and spin this up and test it out. But just like you do with any other offensive operation. Well, let's see. So once the image is injected in the form of the electromagnetic signal, it'll undergo a series of digital processing procedures, which is a white balance and a gamma correction. Direct modulating and injecting the original image will inevitably cause color deviations and contrast shifts. Therefore, to faithfully reconstruct the target image, we pre-adjust its color and contrast. Yeah, so they're just shifting it ahead of time, expecting when the image gets red, it's going to shift it back to what the actual target should be. Let's see, go through noise reduction and then a little bit of brightness normalization. Let's see. Monochrome injection, cool. I want to see some of the pictures, like what kind of output they're actually getting from injecting into these cameras. Also, I'm curious what kind of equipment they needed to do this. Like, is it really feasible to make this portable? So this was an attack performance and a medical diagnostics. Let's see. What else we got here? Here we go. Zoom this in a little bit. Interesting. So, what are they referencing here in Figure 14? Where's the 14 figure we see? I never did like this layout for a lot of these technical documentations because I'm very particular about where I lay out my figure references. Actually, here we go. Case study 2, so fire detection. So CCD cameras possess an exceptional dynamic range, making them ideal for a variety of security surveillance applications, including fire monitoring and security surveillance. So many CCD cameras are used in commercial intelligent fire detection systems, enabling automatic fire detection and alarm activation. So we assessed the attack on 2 fire detection models, the YOLO V5 and FireNet. Across a couple data sets, there was one from NASA and another one from DFire. Random selected 100 non-fire images and 100 fire images from each dataset and conducted CA and HA respectively. Subsequently, the post-attack images were identified with the 2 detection models. The result was presented in Table 4, indicating the attack could consistently impact the effectiveness of the fire detection system across different models and datasets. I mean, that might be really interesting to do. Trigger a false fire alarm. Dan, thanks for the resub, man. Super appreciate that. The modular setup was pictured somewhere at the top of the page. Yeah, let's go take a look at that a little bit. I zoomed in a bit so we can get a better look at it. But look at that. That looks like... So here's our camera, power supply, amplifier, laptop, and then there's the antenna. So actually, that's not a terribly... bulky setup. It's certainly not what I would call necessarily field portable, unless you were able to like put all this in a backpack, get close to the antenna. Now, when they were doing this, they said they got the antenna to within about, they had to have it about 1 meter away from the camera for it to work. So other things that would be interesting if you were like really trying to weaponize this, check and see, hey, could you use a directional antenna? Would that work? Then what's the distance variation of it? Because essentially what you're kind of looking at here, let's see. Oh, I didn't bring up the tablet. Hang on one sec. We'll do a little bit of antenna design 101. Stand by, y'all. Here we go. All right. Let's take a look at this. So typically, if you're looking at someone like, if you're looking like a normal antenna, so let's say like your rubber ducky. So say you got your little alpha here, and it's got your little rubber ducky antenna. When this makes an antenna pattern, usually what you're getting is something a little bit more akin to a flat donut. So on the X side, it kind of just looks like this with the antenna like right there in the middle. If you're looking at it up and down, like let's say this is the Y side, what you're seeing is something a bit like this. It's a little bit less detective in the middle, but still pretty good. And you get this kind of toroidal donut shape with the antenna. So your antenna would be like right about here. So with the directional antenna though, it's exactly what it sounds like. Typically got something like this. And then when it fires that cone, it's basically more a little bit like a cone when it comes up right here. So rather than being spread out like a donut, it's much more directional in this sense. Yeah, Dan, I did hear about that. Copilot accessing files with no log. That was pretty cool. I think I retweeted that earlier today. So it's a waveform generator. Stuff like that is made by lots of lab equipment companies. I wonder how much RF power and amplifier they used. Let's see if we can find it. Because I'm very curious about this too. Because like I said, they said they had to get within like 1 meter. Let's see. Where do they reference figure? Here we go. So here's the experimental setup. So we conducted all the experiments in a shielded chamber following regulations and wear electromagnetic shielding clothing. And the experimental setup shown in figure 11, bravo. Ah, it's this one right here. This was figure 11. Take that back. Wait, was this figure 11? Yes. So when testing the cameras outside the lab, we did not observe similar interference from electronic devices, as the attack is effective only with intentional signals of specific frequencies and waveforms. So the attack devices used in the laboratory setting included an ETMIS, USRP X310, and two RF daughter boards, basically. Maximum signal bandwidth of 160 megahertz for signal generation. Let's see, and they used a mini circuits 100W GaN plus amplifier. Let's see, and an antenna for an EMI signal transmission. So it's worth noting that the signal generator needed to have high capacity of data modulation to achieve the capacity of arbitrary injection mentioned in section 5. The under-test CCD cameras are positioned in front of an LCD monitor that displays images similar to various visual scenarios. Okay, so what they did is they had the camera right here. See that? So there's our camera. It's pointing at an LCD monitor right there. So that way that's how they're simulating the images, and then they're trying to inject it to see where it comes in at. That amplifier is $3,700. Damn. Here, by the way, I'll link to the paper for y'all if y'all want to read over it, because a couple of y'all all are like super electronics nerds. I wish I was. I'm going to work on it with Agent Zero when he gets a little bit older, and we're going to have some fun with it. I'm looking forward to it. But overall, it sounds pretty neat. It sounds like, at least in a controlled setting, they were able to make this work. And a lot of people will kind of poo-poo on that, but getting it to work in a controlled setting is the first step to getting it to work in an uncontrolled setting. All right. So that was actually pretty neat. Let's see. Oh, what is this? Static keys to abusing PDQ Smart Deploy. Static hard-coded universal encryption keys just added a step for attackers. They don't actually protect anything. Let's see. Was this the one that Garrett wrote? Hold on. I have to... always have to delete this. No, not that button. Stand by. Let me clean up the page a little bit. I think it is... hang on. I have so much stuff running on this computer right now. It is lagging quite a bit. Where'd it go? Hold on. Inspect this. Nope, don't want that. This is the part I want. Be gone. Is that it? Nope, I deleted the wrong thing. You could probably make it for cheaper. Oh, definitely. I mean, these are guys working in a lab, though. They probably have access to that equipment. Let me see something. Can I? You are killing me with this. Hang on one sec. We're not working on Hackbot tonight anyway. Let me close this. I have some video editing software running in the background, and so I'm pretty sure that's chewing up a decent amount. There we go. Now it's gone. All right. Makes it easier to read the article. Because I try to zoom in so y'all can actually see the text. And so when you have these big headers up here, it just wrecks it. It's annoying. If you want to wipe out a camera, just get a Baofeng handheld walkie-talkie with 400 plus megahertz. Yeah, just boop. Just nuke it. Let's see. So this is for PDQ Smart Deploy. Apparently they had static encryption keys, which is atrocious. Let's see. So prior to version 3.0.2046, PDQ Smart Deploy used static hard-coded and universal encryption keys for secure credential storage. So low-privileged users may recover and decrypt privileged credentials such as the local administrator or Active Directory domain joined accounts from the registry of managed devices of the operating system. It's stored on the deployment servers. Jeez. Of all the times that we've run across this where it's like hard-coded credentials on something, you would have thought that they would have figured this out. Let's see. So PDQ Smart Deploy is a Windows OS deployment solution that uses some light software deployment capabilities via agent management. The product is advertised as a more accessible SECM adjacent OSD product with a lower learning curve, which I can attest to. So apparently he finds that statement to be factual. The workflow for generating a golden image is pretty straightforward, and the application includes an image capture wizard to make creating a golden image relatively painless. So during my testing, I had a working image within an hour. Nice. Okay, that's a good part. Let's see. With a prepared image, admins may choose to set up supporting platforms and application packs for hardware-based driver installations and baseline software installs. Both features can be leveraged to pull from the PDQ managed repository of driver and software versions and choose to install their own custom versions. And to facilitate installation, Smart Deploy comes with a custom version of answer files. So answer files are granular XML files with lots of configuration options. But the key thing to know is that they can be configured with a lot of different credentials. So you can have optional attended or unattended deployments, auto login creds, network creds to access the images, and 80 domain join credentials to automate domain enrollment. Always nice for a good little foothold there. So here's how the encrypted credentials appear in the XML file. So it looks like they're some kind of encrypted right here. You see this? Domain join creds here. I just noticed something. Look at this. So this one is domain admin. See that? And this makes sense too if they're using a static encryption key. Because look at this is domain admin. This is for the auto login. So what's going to log in as soon as you boot up the operating system? Logs in as domain admin in the Ludus domain, and here's the password, right? And look at this one. So to join the computer to the domain, you can use a different set of credentials. So this is the domain join user in the Ludus domain, but that's the exact same value. See that? If you don't believe me, there it is. Yep. So those are exactly the same. So the bad thing about that is if they're not using a salted password encryption, then bam, you know that at least those two have the exact same password. So the downside to this again is now we know, okay, maybe we just need to get the domain join password and then we'll have the domain admin password. That's already not great. Let's see. And then there's the what is it? The network creds they call it. So for the deployment options, you've got 3 settings you can use. Boot media, designed to install with Windows with WDS, basically a sneakernet install via USB. You can also use Smart Deploy console installations for deployment packages, and you can do an offline deployment, so allow install without a LAN network connection. All right, so how the credentials stored here. Let's see, I couldn't find any information on how the credentials were stored while using Smart Deploy. The closest thing I found was how cloud storage provider credentials were not stored, but instead used generated auth tokens via an app consent. Luckily, the software is primarily built in C#. RIP. So finding the encryption routines wasn't too difficult. Searching for the string decrypt was in the service binary lands on the sdcommon DLL.net assembly of that machine. Nice. The encryption routines can be found in the encryption class from the common security namespace. Take a look at the decryption method. It's apparent there's some type of obfuscation being used, and the assembly info confirms the source code was obfuscated using Redgate's smart assembly. Interesting. So they didn't just leave it like grayed out in clear text, but I got bad news for them. Garrett is really smart. He'll figure this out. So this is my first time dealing with smart assembly, so I had to do a bit of research on how to go about deobfuscating it. There's a good source code floating around, but I also found a blog, which was most useful for understanding how to walk back the obfuscation, particularly the Unicode obfuscation that I was seeing. So in that blog, the author mentions trying to use a tool, which is D4dot, to automate the deobfuscation. But I ran into errors using that, so fortunately, a maintained forked version exists that had no issues. Nice. So when opening up the cleaned DLL, the Unicode obfuscations removed. The decrypt method uses AES-256 CBC. That makes complete sense. And there was a couple of interesting details, though. It tries to avoid a debugger. The AES key is decoded, encoded, and then decoded again from this byte1 variable. The initialization vector is decoded from byte 0. The ciphertext is base64 decoded, and some replacement was done using XML. And the decrypted value is returned. Okay. But now that you've got the debug, it's not that much to figure out from there. Turns out the variables for the AES key and the IV are hard-coded into the application, which the smart assembly obfuscation previously hid from view. Yep. Because the other option is, let's say they've got the decrypt option, right? The other option is decrypt would have to call something over on the server to get a decryption key to unencrypt those passwords, right? So what's the other option? They just packaged it in there. Now, that's not necessarily horribly bad, but at least when they were generating this as part of the deployment, they could have randomly generated those. Instead, it looks like they took the easy approach, which was we make one config, we have one binary, and you just ship those together. Which you could even still do. You could just use like the same one across, and at least then it wouldn't be the exact same static hard-coded one. I remember one time there was a smart lock a buddy of mine was testing, and it had hard-coded SSH keys into the lock. That was real bad. So basically, you could always use the same private key to go SSH into the lock and open it. Let's see. So you probably already noticed something's not matching up. The decrypt method expects the ciphertext to be base64 encoded, but from the snippets from the answer file, the ciphertext is hex encoded. So there's another encryption routine that uses AES ECB that expects the ciphertext as hex. I did notice that. I was like, this doesn't look like hex, or 64. This looks like hex values. So this method uses an encryption key from string 0, IV from byte 2, decrypts the ciphertext using the hard-coded key, but notice the null, since ECB doesn't even use an IV. Yeah. Parses the decrypted value and strips the null byte for padding. If you're wondering why ECB doesn't have an initialization value, it's because each byte essentially becomes like the next initialization value in there. CBC, if you encode the same value twice, then you get the same thing in there. If I remember correctly. Don't quote me on that. Let's see. So the encryption key is hard-coded and visible in the original obfuscated DLL, and the decryption hex encoded ciphertext is trivial. RIP. Let's see. So now that we understand how the credentials are encrypted in the answer files, let's dig into how the various methods are distributed during OS deployment. So if you're using something like a Windows deployment service, Smart Deploy integrates with WDS. Pretty straightforward, and the process is well documented. So prior to importing the image, admins hosts first create the WDS deployment. During that process, admins may choose to configure the platform and application package, as well as application packages to support extended Pixie boot. Little Pixie. Once built, it's as simple as following the import guide for the generated WIM. I hadn't seen WIM before. I almost read that as WMI. To add to the WDS server. So once the stage is completed, any authenticated user will have access to the image file. This is due to the default configuration of the WDS share to grant authenticated users read access. Pretty much, yeah. That's usually how it's going to go. Any authenticated user could have access to it. So the downside here also, let's say you're on a network and you find this share wherever it exists. You have any kind of credentials, you log in, you get those, you download them. Then, since all this stuff is static, you now instantly can unpack that image. You've got at least another set of credentials on the network. Let's see. So if WDS is integrated with Active Directory, a connection point object is published as a child object. That makes it trivial to narrow down computers on the network configured with this role. Nice. Is ECB comically weak? No. Let's go take a look at it. Let's see. AES. CBC versus ECB. So the difference between the two is, let's see if I can bring this up. Where's there it is. Oh my god, why is it so tiny? It needs more JPEG. All right, so here's how ECB works, where you have plain text, blocked cipher comes in, bam, bam, bam. Was I getting those backwards? I think I was. Correction. I think I was getting ECB and CBC backwards. Yeah. ECB is the one where, like, hey, everything just kind of comes in. You do have an initialization vector, and it comes through and it encodes it. So the downside is that every byte that's identical gets encoded to the exact same value, right? So in this case, you could easily tell this was a picture of Tux, right? Even with it being encrypted, because all the values got converted into the other values. Thank you, Hydrinks. I actually had those backwards. Yeah, ECB is not that great. Cipher block chaining is actually when you do have an initialization vector, you pass it in, and then the output ciphertext is actually used as part of the encryption for the next block. Yeah, I had those backwards in my head just now. So now instead, if you try to do the same thing with Tux up here, it's just going to look like snow, because every previous block has been used as part of the encryption key for the next block, whatever it happens. So yeah, ECB, not good. CBC, it's good. It's helpful. I'm glad you asked about that. I thought Doge defunded CBC. No. Yes, they've defunded math. That's what they've done. Let's see here. So once you're opening the WMI file with a tool like 7-zip, you can extract the answer file and recover any encrypted credentials presented. Yep. Just like that. Let's see. You can also do a console deployment. So similar to WDS deployment requirements, admins have to configure a deployment package for using for the Smart Deploy console. So after that console deployment, it's as simple as selecting a managed target from the computer management menu and clicking deploy. Send it out. The registry, actually, hold on. I missed a part here. So on the freshly deployed operating system, the registry key right here for Smart Deploy contains the credentials used to support deploying the operating system, including a local administrator credential set during the initial golden image capture. So the registry key allows low privilege users to read and therefore decrypt the stored values, which could lead to privilege escalation on the local machine. So another bad thing about this is, think about this, if they're not using LAPS, where they have randomized local administrator password service is what it stands for. Essentially, it takes the local password, it randomly generates it, and then it stores it in Active Directory, and it's restricted to who can read that password. However, if you are able to get your local administrator in here, then you can just instantly escalate on this machine. But also, chances are, if they're not using LAPS, it's the same local admin password against every other system that got deployed in this fashion. So your lateral movement capabilities just went way up. What world do we live in where the government can't fund XOR operations any longer? Aw, too funny. Dude, power requirements for computation are going up so high. I mean, I'm sure you guys have heard this. They're talking about turning on nuclear power plants again. I was like, really? It wasn't the whole idea of reducing CO2 emissions and trying to just generate more clean power, which nuclear is super, super clean? That wasn't enough? No, we need catgirl videos generated by AI. That's what's doing it to get the nuclear power back? Oh, jeez. Let's see. What about for cloud storage? So Smart Deploy also integrates with some cloud hosting image storage deployments. Let's see. Overall, the deployment process is similar to the previous method. You'll need to have a prepared image file that can be stored in the cloud provider, and a credential will be encrypted and stored in the corresponding answer file. The permission consent are pretty broad depending on your point of view. If nothing else, it's a cloud credential that introduces hybrid attack paths. Yep. All right, so let's look at the privilege escalation here. So returning to the original decryption routine, I highlighted that the method expects a base64 encoded ciphertext. But on the Smart Deployment host server, there's a configuration-related .json file that contains that base64 encoded blob. Of particular interest is the auth.json file, which contains that base64 blob. Oop, right there. So decrypting this blob reveals JSON for credential material of the users that have signed in with their Smart Deploy credentials, which are then associated with the user's signed in local or Active Directory account. So in at least one previous assessment, we've leveraged credentials stored in this blob to gain administrative control of the Smart Deploy application and therefore control all managed devices. Hold on, let me back this up. There's a piece I'm missing here. All right, so the original method expected a base64 encoded ciphertext. On this, okay, so this was on the Smart Deploy host server. Got it. So there's a configuration related to a .json file, and there's an auth.json file on that. So basically saying if you compromise the Smart Deploy hosting server, your lateral movement methods just went boop, or user compromise methods just went way up. Okay, cool. Hang on one sec, guys. I'm letting the ads tick down real quick for everyone. Oh, that's funny. It's funny how many of these Spectre Ops blog posts come from like real world pen tests. Like, hey, by the way, we saw this thing on a pen test. We pwned it. Now we're going to write a blog post about it. By the way, not sponsored by Jocko yet. Perfect. Let's see. Awesome. So basically, going back to where we were. On the server here, there's an auth.json file in the configuration. Let's see. When you decrypt that blob, it has credential material for users that have signed in with their Smart Deploy credentials, which are then associated with the user's signed in local or AD user account. So on that one On at least one previous assessment, we've leveraged credentials stored in this blob to gain administrative control of the application, of the Smart Deploy application, and therefore control all managed devices. Once you've got that, you could go, if I understand it correctly, it's like push out application packages. Could be your just C2 package. Furthermore, the Smart Deploy user accounts are supposed to be associated with a valid license to authenticate to the service. This was not the case, as the account we used was several years old, not associated with a license, and the user didn't even work for the client anymore. That's funny. That's the best way to write a blog. I know, right? Let's see. And then here's the... If you ever want to go take a look at them, up on Garrett's GitHub, I'll drop the link to it in chat for everybody. There is the GitHub repository that's got all those decrypt scripts. Nice. Now, I think he said that they have fixed this. Let's see. So anything before 3.0.2046 that has this issue. So be aware of risks. Beware of the risks that persist with domain joined accounts and object ownership. Object ownership in AD is a complicated subject. It really is, and I've abused it quite a few times, in just the last year. So I strongly encourage you to reference Jim Sikora's white paper on owned or pwned. Chris Thompson's blogs like, do you own the permissions or do your permissions own you? Pretty much. And use LAPS for local administrator password management. Otherwise, ensure the password is used differently. Definitely. LAPS is a little bit of a double-edged sword, but I enjoy it. All right. What else we got here? Good work from Garrett there, as always. Let's see. There was a pwn-to-own Vancouver exploit in the Windows kernel. Fun, but those are always hard read because they're very, very deep. Let's see. Revolt. When your SOC turns against you. Oh, I wanted to take a quick peek at this. I don't know if we're going to read through it a ton because it did look like it was a very, very deep technical document. But essentially, it was about what happens if you compromise something like your TPM. Or if you're running like any other like trusted compute module or computing platform and it gets compromised. Here, I'm going to drop the link for this for y'all to read. Actually, to what? If you want to read these, all these stories come from the Bad Sector Labs blog. So there's a copy of it. It usually comes out on Monday, occasionally comes out on Tuesday, but it's a really good blog. I really enjoy it. That's where I get most of these stories from. 9 times out of 10, whenever I go collecting stories, they're already in here. Labs is such a pain in the butt. I get frustrated with it and just wrote a script to look in the attributes for the AD and computers and tell me what it is. Yeah. I mean, that's pretty much it, dude. If your account has read permissions to that, I'm trying to think of the correct term, but basically if you have the read permissions to that, is it field on the object? Then yeah, you can just go pull the LAPS password right out. Yeah. It doesn't necessarily have to be a domain admin account though, Cam. If you have, if you compromise a system, because here, let's take a look at it real fast. So one thing a lot of people don't realize with this, and now if you wanted to read like a whole bunch, yeah, you'd want to have like some kind of like high priv user in there. But essentially what you've got is, let's say you've got, computer X, right? And that lives in Active Directory. In there's a field where it is basically like, I think it's MSDS LAPS password, if I remember correctly. I think that's actually really wrong. But anyway, we'll go with it. And then this is a read restricted, let's see, read restricted field in there. So not everybody can read it, but one system that can read it by default is, like, say, computer X in here. And this computer has to be able to read its own LAPS password. So once you get access, let's say you compromise the system, you escalate onto it, then you can actually go read its own LAPS password. But even beyond that, that computer, depending on how it was set up, I've seen sometimes where computers actually had something like a generic all read permission, right? I have seen this, and it looks weird. Generic all against, like, let's say computer Y. So then it might seem kind of weird, but yeah, you've got his lapse password. Now you've got generic all over computer Y. If you've got generic all, you can read his lapse password and then you can move laterally over to it. So it makes a weird little dance that happens there. Yeah, it's a security attribute field. I forget the exact terminology. I just hack it. I don't set it up. Having fun with it. I like abusing this stuff. Let's see. Let's see. Looks like there's another FortiSIM pre-auth command injection. RIP. Oh, I can't sit like that. My knee is not liking it when I sit with my leg crossed. Let's see. Oh, actually, I did want to read this one. Machine account takeover with an LSA store private data. Good alternative if you can't get a dump from LSAS. Let's see. So yesterday, I stumbled upon an old tweet from Ardvarmo. There we go. So in it, he described the local admin can use built-in casesetup.exe to change the password of the machine account. Oh. So this only takes effect after a reboot, but it got me thinking. Sometimes you're a local admin and you need to control over the computer account. So for example, as a precondition for an ADCS escalation attack. So in the previous solutions, we included, or would include, elevating to system or dumping LSA to extract the computer password. But depending on how you do it, an EDR won't like it. So what about setting a new password instead? So with the idea in mind, I wanted to figure out how case setup changes the machine password. So as a first step, I looked at the events that were captured by Procmon. While I didn't see much, I did notice operations on various LSA and RPC related registry keys. Let's see. So next I threw case setup into Gahydra. So after acquiring symbols for the executable, I found a function called set machine password. Excellent. Sounded rather promising. Thankfully, the function was easy to understand. The documentation of LSA open policy and LSA store private data answered all my remaining questions. Okay. Let's see. Yep, that's code. I'm looking at it. I'm not very good at reverse engineering. No, I'm better at forward hacking. Hey, Oni, what's up, man? Let's see. So this resulted in the following re-implementation here. So we have an LSA offshore, let's say object attributes, and in main, what we do is looks like it's gonna it just fails. So probably what you're doing is probably executing this and supplying the password. So what's yeah. So here's our argv1. That's our password. Argv0 is going to be the program name, by the way. If you didn't know. Yeah, things are going pretty good, man. We're just we're expanding our hacker knowledge, getting the lay of the land on the news. Thankfully, yes, my back is doing really well. My knee is also healing up because for anybody who didn't know, I was in Seattle last week for work. Thursday night was going out to dinner with some coworkers. I went back to the hotel to drop off my bag, and I was catching up with him. I saw him across the street. I was like, oh, okay, cool. I'll just run across the street real quick. Well, the street slopes down like this, and the curb doesn't, and I just, boom, ate it. Curb jumped up and hit me. Gravity took over, and I busted my knee up real good. Hey, Carson, what's up, man? So thankfully, my knee is a lot less swollen. It's still all kind of scratched up to hell, but it is getting better. I think I'll be able to start getting back to some regular movement next week. I'm just a little bit restricted right now. All right, I'm gonna see what they're doing here with this. So for our password, so they're gonna open the they're gonna run LSA open policy. We're gonna get our attributes and handlers, and then literally all they do is take that password. Status is private data, key name. Oh, okay. Wow, that's actually really straightforward. Just one call to LSA private data, LSA store private data. Wow. So after fighting with MinGW, as one does, it actually worked. And the two EDRs I tested against did not blink an eye. Bonus. Well, actually, that was bonus one. Here's bonus two. So while testing my implementation, I noticed something strange. So after the new password took effect,
The old password kept working for a while, but only for NTLM authentication. So it's new to me that an account can have multiple valid passwords at the same time. Chances are actually what's happening is not that you have multiple valid passwords, it's that the old password is being stored as a backup, because in Active Directory, you will... yeah, because he's authenticating with password 2 and 3 here. You can kind of see it. There we go. So what he's doing, he's connecting over to the DC with this server. He's got password 2, password 3, and you see that they're both working with Kerberos authentication here. So what's happening is it's working with NTLM because of how let me think about this. Actually, it's weird that it's not working with Kerberos in here with TAC-K. I believe that's the Kerberos flag for NetExec. This one I would have expected to work because it's keeping 2 copies of the NTLM password for just in cases, right? It keeps like the first oldest and then the current when it keeps it in there. So it's weird though that it wouldn't try to use the old one for that. That was the whole reason for keeping those, is that way any issue tickets or things like that, they would stay active. Interesting. Yeah, Hydrogen, I'm actually doing fine. The hardest part is that it always seems like my kids, they always seem to find a way to hit me in the one spot that is injured. And sure enough, I was watching a little TV with them tonight. We're sitting on the couch, and my youngest one, like, is laying next to me with his feet towards me, and he just starts kicking me in the knee. I'm like, ow, you little butthead, stop it. Yeah, your daughter doesn't hit you, but yeah, I have 2 little boys though, and they're all about hitting me and beating me up. Let's see. What else we got going on here? Yeah, Carson, everything's been going pretty decently. It was nice to go to Seattle, even though I miss the family. I get a lot of work done when I'm traveling. I just work extra hard whenever I travel for work. I was like, if I'm going to be away from the family, I'm just going to make it worthwhile. And thankfully, we've got, video calls. I can call my wife on like FaceTime or something. And I can at least see the kids now. It must have really sucked back in the day. I do want to take a look at this one though. Real fast, juicingntds.dit. And of course it's from those tryhards over at Spectre Ops. Let's see. I think it's this one. Yeah, there we go. Get rid of that. Let's see, who wrote this one? Michael Gaffnetter. I haven't thought if I've read any blog posts from Michael. Let's see. So the TLDR, several new Active Directory offline attack capabilities have recently been added to the DS Internals PowerShell module. So these enhancements include the Golden DMSA attack, nice, full support for lapse, and the ability to extract trusted passwords and BitLocker recovery keys. Excellent. And thanks to some changes made under the hood, large NTDS files with more than 100,000 users process much faster. It's now possible to read databases originally from read-only domain controllers. Ooh, nice. So as a result, DS internals can access all types of secrets and confidential information stored in the ntds.dit file. So if you're not familiar with what this file is, for everybody who doesn't know, that is basically like the master list of all the passwords for the users in there. And it's not their straight up password, it's their NTLM hash. And that is where it is stored. So if you dump a copy of the ntds.dit file, you have effectively compromised every user in the account. And it goes beyond that even, but just know that that's the ultimate effect of it. Really, if your ntds.dit gets compromised, there's no real way to resecure your Active Directory domain without just starting from scratch. And it has to do with various, like, let's call them service keys that exist in there that can allow an attacker to completely backdoor your domain. You're pretty much pwned at that point, hard. Let's see. Oh, they have an offline golden DMSA attack. Nice. I do love the dial-up. I know it's probably supposed to be Danny. I'm going to go with Dixney. Dixney. Thank you for coming online. Welcome in. And happy Tuesday to everybody. Happy Taco Tuesday. Hope you got some good tacos. And yes, Adel says it was nice to see you again. So I had a buddy. I actually started a like an ultimate like nerd fight. I talked about this briefly at the beginning of the stream, but I started a huge nerd fight because when I tripped, I actually shattered my phone screen. It's busted all down here where the keyboard is. And so I was contemplating switching to an iPhone. And I started a big old nerd fight at work. It was the thread of the day. There were so many messages in there going back and forth about it. And I was cracking up at some of the responses in there. It was hilarious. Yeah, it's Danny. Nice, man. Welcome in. All right, let's take a look at this. You know what? What's funny is I don't think I've actually messed with DS internals on that PowerShell module very much. I should take another look at it. Let's see. So this ADDB service account commandlet can retrieve the group managed service account and the delegated managed service account object types from the ntds.div file and calculates their current managed password using the KDS root key, which is also stored in that database. Depending on each account type, the attacks are referred to as the golden GMSA or golden DMSA. Let's see. I'm looking for a little advice. My internship wants to offer me full-time as help desk. You think that's a good move? My school's online. Just wondering if I should send it for my next step in security. Pay's not the best, but it provides experience. What's your workload like, Carson? Like, how many hours of school are you actually taking? Because you have to remember, for every hour of schoolwork, there's typically minimum one, usually 2 hours of additional work that are going to go into that. That's why something like 12 to 14 hours is considered a full-time load, because you've got, let's say, 12 hours of schoolwork, then an additional 24 hours potentially of like additional work on top of that. So it's 12 hours in class, 24 hours of schoolwork. So you're talking a combination of 36 hours right there. Hey, Mars, what's up? What is that emote? That is awesome. It's like a cardboard guy. I love that. That's it. Hang on one sec, guys. I gotta run to the bathroom. I'll be right back. All right, I'm back. All right, let's see. Working through a Lua course. Oh. I'm trying to think if I had any Lua puns. I don't know if I do. I was thinking something like aloha, like aloha, but that didn't work. It's a little too off. Let's see. So I'm taking 9 credits this semester. Last semester I took 12 credits and spent about 10 hours or so on a Sunday to just hammer it out. Okay. I mean, depending on when you can do the work, is it like 100% online, Carson? Like you're doing the learning online. The professor says, "Hey, read this stuff, watch this video." I think if it's 100% online, you could do that. And I did that all through my college years. I was very fortunate though, because I was able to work like shorter hours during the week. And so I worked like a one long day on a Friday when I didn't have classes. and then I worked a little bit on Saturday, and I had Sundays off. So I was able to get all the stuff balanced out. It was not easy though. I took my heaviest semester. I took like 17 hours, and I was working full time. It was very unhealthy. 3 out of 7 do not recommend. Okay, 100% online, then yeah, man, I would say if you could pull that off and they're not going to jack you around with hours and like give you a ton of overtime, I'd say that'd probably be a good bet to do. Plus, if the help desk isn't like slam packed and you've got a little bit of downtime, you may be able to get a little bit of like, I would say, homework done during that time. I wouldn't try to do your learning during that time because it would probably be high chance of interruption and having to stop. But if you could work on a little bit of something here, there, heck, I mean, just work on something while you're eating lunch. Try to maximize your time as much as possible. What is G-code, Mars? I'm actually not familiar with G-code. Holsters and tactical accessories. Are you working on your dry fire, Mars? Yeah, no worries, Carson. Oh, for CNC machines. Gotcha. Okay. Peaches? You okay? There you are. Peaches was making a weird noise just now. That's my puppy. Yeah, I'm sure there are strings in G-code, Ken. I'm sure there are. Oh, too funny. Let's see. So this is pretty cool. So what he's doing here is he's dumping this stuff from a ntds.dit, right? And then here we're getting the actual NT hash and the AS256 and 128. Perfect. So these are almost as good as having passwords, especially since you can go forge your own tickets, I believe, if you have this. So this means if a malicious actor obtains a backup of the domain controller, regardless of whether it's an old backup containing historic password hashes, they can still derive the current passwords of managed service accounts. So as the next step, they could use them to authenticate against AD or to impersonate any user over Kerberos against the corresponding service by launching a silver ticket. One common target for such an attack is ADFS, which often provides access to cloud services like Microsoft 365 or Amazon's AWS. The KDS root keys are stored in the configuration partition, making their use applicable across the entire forest. Now, you might be wondering, why is this? It's because something like Microsoft 365 doesn't enforce divisions between domains the way like Active Directory does. So each domain is its own authenticating system in there. But you can actually have those multiple domains mapped to a single Microsoft 365 tenant. So then all the divisions, the forest, the divisions of domains, all those melt away in well, not really in 365, but really more like in Azure, Microsoft Entra ID. Used to be Azure AD. But so all those just kind of melt and they merge into one up there. That's awesome. This highlights the well-known fact that domain is not a security boundary. In some cases, a forest may not serve as a security boundary at all either. So a minor complication arises from the fact that the MSDS managed password ID attribute of managed service accounts is not replicated to global catalogs. Fortunately, this attribute is publicly readable over LDAP. G-code's basically writing positional coordinates in 3D space to move the tooling to where you want it to move. I always thought it was more complex than it really is. Yeah. See, I would have thought that a lot of that, though, Mars, was done in like maybe something like CAD, where you design the shape that you want and then maybe it takes that and converts it to G-code. I haven't thought about the entire process. I've just seen people developing things in CAD for CNC systems. Let's see. Microsoft apparently wrote an article on recovering from golden GMSA attacks. Applies the golden GMSA attack as well. Unfortunately, the recommended incident response procedure is more intricate than simply generating a new KDS root key. It involves An authoritative restore of Active Directory. Ooh. Ooh. Rip. Let's see. So that get ADDB account commandlet can also now decrypt all Windows Labs passwords using the KDS root key in offline mode, including the Labs encrypted password, password history, the DSRM password, not familiar with that one, and the DSRM password history. So this allows the retrieval of Labs passwords even during Active Directory disaster recovery scenarios. The MSDS Labs password and admin password attributes contain the Windows Labs and Legacy Labs cleartext passwords, respectively. Yep. That's pretty cool. Now, this is the one I'm most interested about with the read-only domain controllers. So this commandlet can now be used to decrypt the ntds.dit file originating from an RODC. Let's see. As we observe from the output, only a limited number of account password hashes are present in the database. This is because the password replication policy blocks secret attributes of most accounts from being cached on RODCs. That's why I was interested in this, because the way a read-only domain controller goes is that only certain passwords get cached in there, and I think only certain ones can authenticate against them, if I remember correctly. Don't quote me on that. Let's see. So a secret attribute is any attribute of the following set of hard-coded Windows source codes. Let's see. So as a result, we'll not find trust passwords or DPAPI backup keys on RDCs. Moreover, the following 80 attributes included in the RDC filter attribute set never replicate to RDCs. So I bet the lapse is in there. Yep. So those attributes above mentioned store the BitLocker recovery keys, Windows Labs passwords, and KDS root key and credential roaming data, making the RODC databases even less usable to attackers. However, it's important to note that the user password and Unix user password attributes are always replicated to an RODC. So while the Unix user password attribute is at least marked as confidential, the authenticated users can read the user password attribute from all the RDCs. Yes, there have been some companies storing clear text user passwords in these attributes. I wish he was making that up, but I know he's not. You manually write the G-code as well, and learning it allows you to make adjustments on the fly if the CAD software was a bit off on something. Also, if you're doing something simple like making a slot in something, it's easier to write it yourself than load up the program for it to do it for you. Oh, okay. Gotcha. All the things I'd like to get if I ever got a proper workshop, but I have to move outside the city for that. Let's see. BitLocker recovery keys. Let me take a look at this section. So the get ADDB trust commandlet can read AD trust objects, decrypt the cleartext passwords from the trust auth incoming and outgoing attributes, and even derive the corresponding Kerberos keys to be used in cross-domain and cross-force golden ticket attacks. Sick. I have never messed with DS internals. I really need to. I should go mess with it a lot more. And it looks like they added the ability to also recover BitLocker keys, which is awesome. And then we had some performance improvements in here. Excellent. Always good stuff. Let's see. Actually, this is something I'm really interested in. Pantheon, which is a guide to script collections for Mythic eventing, which is going to come in real handy here pretty soon because we're almost done with the exploitation agent in Hackbot. Once that's done, we're going to be on to post-exploitation. I'll have Cody come back on to answer questions for everybody about Mythic. Let's see. This one. Excellent. Hang on one sec, guys. We're going to let the ads roll off real quick, and then we'll hit this. Let me go look at the Pantheon GitHub real quick. So Pantheon's a repository containing eventing automation, which includes reconnaissance, persistence, location, and credential preparation scripts. Let's see. All the files follow a standardized naming pattern for easy identification. There's a risk level, description, and then a payload type. Oh, nice. So low would be like network host recon. High might be something like ticket dumping. And these are all using Apollo in here. Medium would be like something like service reconnaissance. Interesting. Let me just take a look at what he's got in here for these. Let's see. Clipboard monitoring with Apollo. How does he do this? Oh, he's got it running as a cron job. Ew. So this polls the clipboard every 60 seconds on a callback. So the steps are get clipboard true, callback ID. You pass the callback ID, and then whatever your parameters are. Nice. So it's going to automatically load the cough file, instantly the function, and whatever arguments you've got. Nice. Let's see. So during my internship, so this was Gavin, I guess, was an intern at Spectre Ops. And the summer just ended, so his internship probably just ended. During my internship at Spectre Ops, I spent time supporting red team and penetration testing engagements using Mythic C2. In some cases, when we would get a new callback from a host, we ran the same reconnaissance commands repeatedly. So while doing that, it became clear that the Mythic eventing functionality could automate some of these routine tasks. Another place for the automation is when we pivoted through dozens of servers looking for credential material for a specific user that we targeted through an attack path found in something like Bloodhound. So running these commands manually takes up a lot of time, which is a concern when operating in time-constrained environments. So the goal is to speed up the initial reconnaissance phase so operators can focus on more complex objectives like actually exploiting what the recon finds. This project addresses the gap in eventing documentation by providing practical examples with YAML scripts for common operational tasks and documenting how to pass commands with specific arguments, as well as different triggers for the script to run, whether that be manual or on a time basis, like something like a cron job. Nice. Let's look at the methodology. So the repository uses an offset categorization system to help operators get a basic understanding of the noise level for each script. So regardless of the offset categorization, before using any of these YAML files, operators should manually review them to understand what's happening on the target system. I mean, that's just true of anything. Anything you're about to throw at a target that you haven't tested in your lab, you really want to test it in your lab first. So there's 4 levels of categorization. So the first category is your OPSEC level, which changes based on whatever the client's running for telemetry. Your execution method, this could be like a native command or a beacon object file or a COF, common object file format. The attack chain, which is the attack phases like reconnaissance, and then the payload type, which determines script execution and command names. The overall OPSEC level will change based on the environment because of installed endpoint detections and solutions and what telemetry is getting generated. It can run, we already talked about this, kind of like BOF or native commands to be executed on the system. With that in mind, most of the commands will run various BOFs and native commands within the target. Boyd, what's up, man? How you doing? LIFO greater than dev null. Get that last in, first out, man. Let's see. What are the attack chain categories? Scripts are organized by the attack chain phases, such as reconnaissance, persistence, lateral movement, etc. Since recon involves many repetitive checks, automating these frees up the operator to execute more of their attack path within a timely manner. And last one is the payload type. So in this case, in the example we're just looking at, everything was running through the Apollo agent of Mythic. So just for anybody who's not familiar with Mythic, Mythic is actually not a C2 platform, it's a C2 framework. So you have different agents you can load in, all sorts of different containers for bolstering the commands you can run through that agent, things you can do. And Apollo is just one of an entire slew of agents in there. And it's probably the most popular because it's written for Windows machines. And it's completely open source. So you could use Apollo in there for, so that's what he wrote all of his examples in there was for Apollo. Ah, you're not late, man. You're right on time. You're fashionably late to the party. Oh, let's see. For offset considerations, let's see. Always manually review the YAML script before execution. Good idea. Test extensively in a lab environment. Yep. BOFs can crash beacons or cause unexpected results, so test their stability before executing on live beacons. Bro, I've had so many times when I was like, this should absolutely be working. Why is it dying? And just having a BOF completely blow out my beacon. It sucks. It doesn't help also that a lot of BOFs have very esoteric command line parsing to them, where you have to specify what the input data type is, like if it's a string or an integer, and sometimes those are very like opaque. It can be really wild trying to just get the correct beacon object file arguments. In Cobalt Strike, you adjust for that a bit by having the aggressor script, and the aggressor script makes a nice little comfy interface between the BOF and the command you run. So it will probably do like some translation to massage the data into the BOF's format and send it. The downside is your BOF is still having to do input parsing. So it can get kind of annoying. Let's see. So you're more like previously mentioned, obstacle levels can vary by the target environment. You may be more likely to find a bank in an S&P 500 that's got a dedicated SOC with optimizing configured security and eventing and an EDR solution compared to a mom and pop shop just running Windows Defender. Yeah, pretty much. Let's see. So the project builds on the work of the Mythic C2 and agent developers and the broader BOF development community. Many object files come from various repositories, and several operators shared their playbooks and techniques throughout the summer to help me gain operational context. Special thank to these folks. All right, here we go. Walkthrough for persistence assessment automation. So the script, this script is an example of automating the location of potential persistence mechanisms within the Apollo agent on my test host. There's many ways for triggering eventing workflows. The main two triggers I use are callback new and manual. So callback new triggers automatically execute a workflow whenever that beacon establishes a connection back to the team server. And the manual trigger executes whenever you tell it to, basically. The callback new trigger is ideal for automating initial reconnaissance or setup commands that should be run on every new compromised host, whereas the manual trigger provides precise control over which scripts execute on which targets. Let's see, but for this type of script, I chose the manual trigger as this script enumerates a lot of register keys and I don't want these BOFs to run on every single callback I get. Good idea. Let's see, first thing I'll need is to grab the medium persistence assessment Apollo YAML. Hold on. Let's go take a look at that one. Actually, he's got the link to it right here. So he's running medium persistence assessment. Let's go look at that real quick. Let's see what the YAML looks like. Here we go. So manual trigger whenever there's an Apollo callback. So a couple steps in here. Query scheduled tasks. And to do that, he's just doing a check of the HKLM key in there for the task tree. Let's see. So he's just doing a who am I to check the current privileges assessment. Although I would think that'd be a who am I / priv. But I don't know. I'll have to ask him about that if I can get a hold of him. Let's see. Query current services. To do this, he is running the sc.exe. So this is running a local command. Actually, this might be... What is he running here? This is the command name. I think that actually might be a built-in command into Apollo, come to think of it. Yeah, this is. I remember now. That's why this is formatted kind of like JSON. Fun fact, Mythic only speaks JSON. Everything else you're seeing is just like a translation hallucination. Hey, Ford, what's up, man? Oh, that would make sense then. If it's the... Oh, maybe that's what he meant by the command, is the command is an Apollo command, or whatever the agent is. It's an agent command. I was thinking it was an operating system command. Like this was the operating system who and I. That would make more sense, Ford. Yes. Big brain on Ford. What's up, man? Let's see. Query the run once, and then query the run register key. Makes sense. Okay, so now we know what he's doing in here. Let's see. I'm going to change the display ID, which would be the input keyword that allows us to fetch the name value for the environment. Let's see. For basically pointing it to the callback we want to execute on. Callback ID is the number that correlates to the beacon number that is running on a host that can find the information on the active callbacks pane. It's when within Mythic, basically under their interaction column. So if I were to run this on every callback, I would keep the display ID the way it was. This can easily be replicated or replaced for each step to match. Basically, it is a manual trick. Cool, so you just take that YAML file, you go upload it into the eventing system, and then you click run. Boop. Easy peasy, lemon squeezy. Yep, that makes sense. Let's see, so debugging these scripts took some trial and errors to figure out which arguments to pass. Mythic provides several debugging options through both the eventing pane and the command pane where you can view the parameters and errors. I didn't actually know about that. One useful debugging trick is test all the BOFs in a command pane using execute cough command directly, as this will allow you to understand how you pass arguments to the eventing script. This will also let you pass arguments like integers, strings, and wide strings without the command line parser getting in the way. Got it. Let's see. Argument passing within both Mythic and BOFs was probably the biggest pain point, but there are multiple ways to pass them, I think is what he meant, depending on the command of the agent. So here's a breakdown. So you can use native JSON, like we were just talking about the reg query. This is all JSON because that's what Mythic actually speaks. It's just JSON all the way down. It's like turtles. Turtles all the way down, JSON all the way down. Let's see, for executing coughs though, it gets a little bit weirder. So we're going to pass the cough as a parameter like this with the argument in the BOF command section. So for example, the arguments, this is a wide char, you're sending localhost. Let's see, so for the cough arguments, you'll generally be able to find what the BOF accepts by viewing the entry.c file in the source code. So for example, the constant here is a wide char, which is passed to as a string to Mythic. See that? So the service name or whatever you're trying to get. And this is just from the situational awareness BOFs repository. This is where it gets to be a pain though, is when you have to like manually do the mappings. So there's several different data types operations to get passed to the BOFs, and here's a table of them. This is pretty much straight out of the BOF documentation for Cobalt Strike, because they're the ones who basically did it first. So it could be binary data, integer, so on and so forth. But yeah, I was actually looking really forward to this because I wanted to, I knew this was coming up and I wanted to take a look at it because I think it's a really cool idea of just having a place where you can kind of combine these together. Apollo is really the most popular one. Ooh, there's already a pull request. Let me see. What did he commit here? What's the file changes? Oh, okay, so he's just changing the, making it a little bit more standardized to like what you're doing. Okay, that makes sense. It's a good idea.
Caution. A virus has
That
been
damn hack smarter virus.
Hack_smarter virus detected in the network.
That's all right. We're just going to send the cookie. Because we're not just hacking smarter, we're hacking harder, baby. What's up, guys? Welcome in, Raiders. From good old Tyler stream. Damn it, Cypher. I'm obviously not pooping right now. I'm sitting right here. That would be... And look, you can see I'm in a computer chair. I'm not like in a space chair. What's up, guys? Tyler, what we all up to tonight? Welcome in, Raiders. For anybody who doesn't know me, my name is Blaise. I have been a computer degenerate since the 2nd grade. I've been working professionally in offensive security for 7 years and IT for 15 years. And just having a blast with it. We're doing a little bit of hacker news tonight. Justin, thank you for coming online. And no, Sid, there is no hole in the bottom of the chair. It's a mesh chair. It's a Herman Miller. I bought it a long time ago, like 10 years ago, and it's still working great. They're a good investment. They last a long time. I was hoping the raid was going to cover for that command. No, Cypher, I see all. I know all. Yeah, we're going through the Last Week in Security blog because it's just such a good collection. And every time I would go through and like, it's very rare that I capture like an interesting news story that's not covered in here. And the news cycle for the last couple of weeks has been pretty ironically slow outside of stuff like that happened at DEF CON and Black Hat. Trying to be the AI overlord. Not really, man. I mean, there's so many other people. So I don't know if you saw this, but like, so for anybody who doesn't know, for all the new folks who just came in, on Saturdays and Sundays, I'm usually working on a little program to play CTFs. It's an AI agent. We call it Hackbot. Eventually, I'm going to actually give it a real name. But Hackbot basically is a agentic AI system. It's not using anything super fancy. It's just using Claude 3.7 on the back end. And it goes through and its job is to play CTFs. We're currently working on the exploitation agent. And then that's just about done, actually. Dude, Tyler, by the way, I got a new system set up where you can write specialty agents. You could just drop them into a directory and it hot loads whenever you execute Hackbot. So that's how we formulated the first web browser agent. And so I'm really excited because I can see lots of cool things to do with like those different special agents. So I'm working a lot on that system right now because it's going to open up a lot of possibilities outside of like playing CTFs. Yeah, it's gonna be cool. I think one of the things we're gonna build into those specialty agents is I'm gonna try to find a way on the side to incorporate, what's the word I'm looking for? To incorporate like a system where they can have their own little knowledge base and we can have a vector database running and then put those in there. And then basically you can have a chat mode with those individual agents. And then you can have all these various pieces of information in there. I got this idea because in my local lab, I uploaded the entire source code for Mimikatz. I was actually building documentation for all the commands and all the switches for Mimikatz because I was so tired of the documentation being out of date. So I just uploaded the entire code base and was testing it. So, relax and thank you for coming online though. Don't want to forget you. So having some fun with that. I don't think I'm going to work on the data ingestion part. That's like a bonus thing I'm thinking down the line. But yeah, I'm thinking having a chat mode where you can just discuss things with it, like different ideas or ask questions about commands that are specialized in there. I think that's going to be pretty sick. And it's going to help it be useful outside of just playing the CTFs for us. Call it Slexibot. Actually, there's a really fun hacking themed game. It's called Night Team 4. Nite Team 4. And it's totally not like legit hacking. A lot of the names and the lore are based on real stuff, but it's a really fun game and it's got a good story. It's a very puzzle game. And in it, you use a system called Stinger. So I'm probably going to officially name it Stinger AI. And that's the name of the supervisor agent in there. So probably what I'll end up calling it. Johnny Five is alive. I loved those movies as a kid. For all you youngins out there who don't have as much gray in the beard as I do, if you've not seen Short Circuit, go watch it. It is a national treasure. I love those movies. Let's see. Oh, cool. Somebody wrote an Impact Developer Guide. So like I said, yeah, we're going through some of the news. There's a little bit of a chunky news night because there's a lot of stuff that just got released at Black Hat and DEF CON, so we're kind of catching up on it. Let's see. Ooh, actually, this is right up my alley right here. Training specialist models, automating malware development. Halo development now includes large language models to make decisions and modifications when going up against certain EDRs at a specific point in time. Nice. So actually, I can see doing something really fun with this because there was also a Ludus MCP server. Let's see. I think this was Nocta Defensor. I think this might be it. Let me see. I believe so. But basically what they did is they made a MCP server for controlling your Ludus server. So that's pretty sick. Imagine having a chatbot that you can talk to and be able to go explain the lab you want and go spin it up. This was actually something I had thought about doing. Not specifically for MCP. I was thinking about this before MCP got officially released. But I want to play with this because that would be pretty sick. Because imagine if you got something like this training specialist models where it's like, oh, hey, by the way, I need a system that meets this specifications. You have some Ludus roles already set up and you tell it to go deploy you a machine with a particular EDR. It's like, okay, sure. Boop. You get a little Ludus lab going. You can shut off the internet at the Ludus router and then be golden. That would be pretty sick. All right, so I definitely want to take a look at this one. I'll drop this one over in the chat for anybody who wants to play with it, this Ludus MCP. While me working on the practical help desk course for Andrew Bellini. Dude, Noipi, everybody has been where you are. Don't feel bad. Everybody starts somewhere. Not everybody starts at level 99. Nobody starts at level 99. I'm not even at level 99. I've been doing this professionally for 7 years. And like I said, I've been kind of doing it on the side, slyly, like learning whatever I could from 2600 magazine since like the 2nd grade. It just comes with time and experience, and that's all it takes, man. Venomous, thank you for coming online. Welcome in, and I hope everybody's having just an absolutely terrific Taco Tuesday. It's a good day today. It does look cool. Hey Jesse, so was that the right Ludus MCP server? Was that the one that you were talking about during your talk? Yep. Okay, cool. I wanted to make sure I had the correct one. I thought it was, but dude, this is awesome. All right, let's take a look at this. So this is training specialist models, automating malware development. So truth be told, I get a professional development budget every year. And so one of the things I'm trying to see if I can get, because there's not a lot of trainings I want to go take. However, there is this little tiny box. You see this guy right here, right above my head, this guy? This is an absolutely massive AI system. It's got 2 of the H100 processors in it, and it's got 128 gigs of what they call unified memory. So basically a single memory card that's shared between the operating system and the 2 graphics processors. They're super hard to get, but I'm going to see if I can actually let me spend my professional development budget on it. It's kind of tricky because when it comes to hardware, it's always kind of iffy. But considering the work I'm doing, my boss really wants me to become kind of like an SME on all things AI and machine learning. I think I can swing it, but that would be really sick to have, because then doing stuff like this, where you're coming through and training custom models, I could actually do. I'm not doing that on my RTX 3060. It's just not going to happen. Anyway, so back to this. Let's see. So can a small self-hosted large language model outperform state-of-the-art models at evasive malware development? I hate to say it, but usually when you ask a question like that at the beginning of an article, it's no. But let's find out. So in this technical deep dive, we explore how reinforcement learning with verifiable rewards enables training compact special agents or specialist models that rival large generalist and domain-specific tasks. Oh yeah, I mean, I think that's probably going to be the future of what's coming down the pipe. Is the large language models are going to have their place, but we're going to have very, very small, hyper-focused models that are going to be used for certain things. I think that's kind of where the future is going to go with it. Let's see. So in the first half, we're going to break down the large language training model process and recent opportunities created by this reinforcement learning verifiable rewards model. Second half details our training methodology for Dante 7B, which, by the way, I think they open sourced this, if I remember correctly. I saw some chatter about this on the Twitters. Let's see. So this is a 7 billion parameter model that generates functional, evasive Cobalt Strike shellcode loaders capable of bypassing Microsoft Defender for MDE. I mean, that's pretty cool, don't get me wrong, but at the same time, it's not super difficult to bypass MDE. Just saying. Oh, they did. Yeah, we released Dante 7B on Hugging Face. So if you want to run this at home, chances are all you need is about a 10 to 12 gig graphics card, and you could run this. You're not going to be playing any games while it's running, but you could run it. Good rule of thumb is, however many billion parameters there are, that's how many gigs of video RAM you need to run something. Let's see. Fishbone, thanks for coming online, man. Yeah, a fleet of Ada GPUs would be pretty handy, but I don't have that. Can the Sparks DGS is the name of the system, and they're really weird to get a hold of. It was this weird nebulous launch that happened around May, and it may or may not actually exist. It's really weird. Yeah, Boyd, so many people are actually running them like by daisy chaining a bunch of the Mac Minis together. It's kind of wild. I really hate that building a fleet of Mac Minis is more economical than just getting like one purpose-built GPU. Nvidia's, I think, kind of getting ready to shoot themselves in the foot. Anyway, let's take a look at this. Actually, tell you what, hang on one sec. Before this kicks off, I gotta go take care of something real quick. I'm gonna run a big ad break, and then we'll be done. We won't have any more ads for the rest of the stream. So I'm gonna do that now. I'm gonna run to the bathroom, and then I'll be right back, guys. We'll finish up. All right. Oh. The only reason I put that stupid poop command in was as a running gag for Oni, because he was always like, if you don't know this, so his wife is from Thailand. She's super smart. But apparently in Thailand, it's like just very common, not considered any kind of social taboo to ask somebody, like they say, hey, I'm going to the bathroom, and they're like, oh, you pooping? And it's like across the street, even they'll just yell that out. And so he would always say that anytime I had to go to the bathroom in chat. It's like, oh, you pooping? So then I finally just added that command in during one of my fever dreams. All right, ads are just about done, and then we can hit this. Because I'm very, very curious on what they did here. Because typically you'd be training these models on like text inputs and text outputs. Here, you can't really do that. So I'm curious what they did. All right, let's do this. No more ads for the rest of the stream. Excellent. We'll be good. All right. So the best models from OpenAI, Google, DeepSeek, etc. are useful for many tasks, but they're far from ideal. Most importantly to me, many closed source models censor topics like red teaming and malware development. Sure, there are jailbreaks and simple tricks to convince the model to help, but I don't want to worry about this every time I use a chatbot. And I certainly can't rely on them to fully automate tooling. Some models are more lenient in that regard, but still raise concerns about privacy and cost, especially for larger commercial use cases. So there are numerous reasons one might prefer a self-hosted model, especially a more affordable small model that said, small open source models just don't cut it for technical workdays. In my experience, at least, they lack the knowledge or reasonable capabilities needed for offensive security research and development. That's not to say we haven't found use cases for the language models of all sizes, but there is a missing category of self-hosted yet technically adept models. Intuitively, it makes sense to me that bigger models outperform smaller models. What exactly makes them better, though? Considering that Meta's Llama 3.1, there's 3 different models in that series, each with a different number of parameters. Parameters collectively give a model its capabilities,
or its capacity to encode knowledge and perform complex tasks. Greater number of parameters increases that capacity. So another critical factor is the composition of the model's training dataset. Developers train most language models on many topics to create a jack of all trades. All three Llama 3.1 models can create recipes, write Python code, or tell you about history. So I propose a simple conceptual framework that, although not technically robust, provides a sufficient overview for this post. Hey, Mr. Boston! It's Mr. Boston, thank you for coming online. I can't do a good Boston accent, but thank you for coming online. Imagine a society where eating was done in private while pooping was a social occasion. Nope. Nope. Damn it, Ken. Broke my brain with that one. All right, let's see. In this framework, let's look at it. So basically talk about the model size, basically divided by the number of skills, is the roughly equivalent. You can say it maps out to what the quality per that skill is. So in this framework, both the parameter count and the number of skills represented in the training set data impact the model's final strength. So the open source models I've seen all train models of various sizes on a similar number of skills, which explains the difference in quality between big and small models. So I hypothesize that reducing the number of skills expected of a model could result in high-quality specialist language models that is small enough to run locally. So my understanding of language model size suggests that it may be possible to surpass large generalist models in some tasks, provided the smaller model is sufficiently large to learn the requirements of those tasks. I mean, that's pretty sound logic. To understand the opportunities for specialist models, I first investigated current large language model training methodologies. Researchers generally train language models in two phases, pre-training and post-training. So there's also a fuzzy concept called mid-training that I won't discuss here, but it may show up in newer papers. Actually, I've not heard of mid-training. Pre and post, yes, but not mid-training. I'll have to look into that. Let's see. So pre-training focuses on compressing information into the model. This process uses a technique called next token prediction. AI Labs collects as much data as possible from sources like books, Wikipedia, GitHub, and Reddit, which explains why Brock tried to become Mecha Hitler, probably. The training process shows the model part of a sentence or paragraph and expects it to complete the original data. Initially, it suggests with this task, but each time the model fails, its parameters are updated, making it more likely to output the correct response next time. That might be like tuning, possibly, Void. I'll have to look into mid-training because I've not actually heard that term before. So I got some more readings to do. Let's see. All right, so the result of pre-training is a base model. Base models are not typically available in applications like ChatGPT as they do not behave like a chatbot. Instead, base models act more like sophisticated auto-completion models. Many open source language models releases will include a base model alongside the chat variant. So you can try out the Llama 3.1 405B base to get an idea of how these models function. Here's an example I generated. What is 2 plus 2? Isn't it 4? What is 2 minus 2? Isn't it 0? And what is 2 times 2? Isn't it 4? And what is? So this is really weird, right? The sky is the limit for UHV professors' hobbies. Many children dream of flying high in the sky. For one university of... little cracked, not in a good way. So I started by asking a model simple math questions. While the model did answer my question, responding to, isn't it 4? It's a bit odd. Then I continued asking more questions, answering them endlessly until it hits the context limit or I manually stop sampling the model. Similarly, the model does a good job completing the sky is, but then it starts talking about a professor I never mentioned. So if ChatGPT behaved like this, it would be much less popular than it is today. Base models are still quite useful. They're just more challenging to prompt compared to post-trained models. All right, so post-training. Next phase of training aims to develop a base model into a helpful assistant. So language model post-training varies significantly, but it generally has 2 steps. Supervised fine-tuning, which teaches the model to follow instructions and format answers. So this model is still trained using next token prediction in this step, but the data set is quite different. In the following example, I asked the same math question from before, but this time my prompt is surrounded by so-called special tokens, meant to indicate the beginning and end of each turn in a conversation. This message also includes a system prompt meant to give the model high-level instructions before each query. My model is then expected to complete the sequence with its response, followed by an end-of-turn token. So in this case, we said I am start, the system, you are a helpful assistant, end that part, and then start from user, what is 2 plus 2, and then we're going to go ending, and then start would be the assistant, and it was going to expect it to respond with this. So by the end of the SFT, supervised fine-tuning, the language model should act like a chatbot. It responds to questions directly instead of rambling on, and it knows how to signal the end of a message. And then we have reinforcement learning from human feedback. So while SFT teaches the model to a chat teaches the model a chat template, RLHF teaches the model to work well with humans. This typically results in a more helpful language model, but also censors harmful topics, including malware development. Common traits of AI bots, such as frequent markdown or bullets listed, may also be caused by RLHF. Many RLHF implementations use an optimized algorithm called proximal policy optimization. So understanding PPO gave me an additional clarity on how the reinforcement learning with variable rewards, I think that's what that stood for, happens here, basically. RLHF starts with collecting a data set of human preferences. The LLM is prompted multiple times with the same input, and the human then chooses the preferred response. Oh, okay. Cool. And you know who the human probably is? It's probably like a group of workers in India. So again, AI really does just stand for actually Indians. Yes. The preference data set is then used to train a completely separate model called a reward model. The reward model accepts language model responses as input and then outputs a score representing how much a human would prefer the response. Once the reward model is trained, it spars with the LLM. The reward score is used to update the model weights in favor of high-scoring responses. So the most interesting thing about the RLHF and PPO is a lack of a traditional dataset. Unlike pre-training and fine-tuning, this final training step does not use next token prediction. Instead, a prompt-only dataset is used to generate LLM outputs, which a reward model then judges. Interesting. So you probably heard of prompt engineering, or maybe you've tried telling ChatGPT it is a red team expert to get better responses. These tricks seem to make a difference, but how does prompting impact the model performance? Google decided to investigate a specific prompting technique called chain of thought to better understand the impact of prompting in various models. So in their paper, the researchers evaluated the Palm 504B on this, whatever this benchmark is, GMS 8K, which is a benchmark of math word problems. They assessed the model by asking it math questions with a standard prompting, and it scored at 18%. Then evaluated the same model with a chain of thought reasoning. So here's an example. Standard prompt, here's a question, here's an answer, here's a question, give us an answer. Chain of thought actually comes through and says, hey, here's what I need. And then chain of thought will actually come through and say, hey, the cafeteria had X amount, and it will walk through what it's thinking. Chain of thought's super handy in some cases. So with no additional training, it scored 39% higher because of the prompt. So this suggests language models have untapped capabilities, a promising lead for training specialist models. So in September 2024, OpenAI announced the O1 model series. So it's a set of language models trained using chain of thought reasoning without special prompting. So these models scored significantly higher in various benchmarks than the best models at the time. So for example, OpenAI's best non-reasoning model before O1, which is GPT-4o, struggled on the American Invitational Mathematics exam with an average score of 9%. So for context, GPT-4o scored around a 95%. So in contrast, both O1 and O1 Mini scored 70% or higher on that performance. Nice. Oh, wait, hold on. So OpenAI's best non-reasoning model before O1 okay, this is written a little bit weird. GPT-4o struggled with it, got about a 9%. This is a weirdly written paragraph. Anyway, let's see. But here's the example here. Here's 4o Mini, 4o got a 9%, O1 Mini, and then O1. So the O1 models don't only excel at math either. The models outperform GPT-4o in a wide range of reasoning-heavy tasks, including science and programming.
OpenAI provided some hints into how they created O1. The information was not clear enough for the broader open source community to reproduce the results. You might imagine they prepared a fine-tuning data set, for example, from chain of thought prompting, but OpenAI stated that through reinforcement learning, O1 learns to hone its chain of thought and refine the strategies it uses. So given my understanding of RLHF, the potential for training the potential of a training method that did not require a traditional data set was quite intriguing. I think so too. I'm curious because actually there's some stuff I've been wanting to test out for training sets. So I'm wondering how he was doing this. This is why I'm reading this article. So it wasn't until January 2025 when DeepSeek released R1, an open source O1 competitor with a comparable training strategy that was made public. Let's see. From the following chart, DeepSeek R1 was competitive with O1 on a variety of math and science and programming benchmarks. Very cool. Let's see. So we've got, where's O1? O1 is the dark gray. So yeah, they're like neck and neck right here. So nearly 1 year earlier, though, in February, DeepSeek published a paper on specialist model called DeepSeek Math. This paper also introduced, what do they call this? Group Relative Policy Optimization, which is a variant of PPO that enhances mathematical reasoning abilities. DeepSeek R1 demonstrated that GRPO can extend other domains similar to the RL algorithm used by O1. All right, so let's take a look at this. So GRPO is an algorithm for reinforcement learning and verifiable rewards. So earlier I described PPO or RLHF as two steps. First is a reward model for training using human preference data. Then the LLM was trained with the reward model. GRPO for RLVR, which is verifiable rewards, on the other hand, is only one step. So there's no reward model in PPO. Instead, the model trains directly with the verifier, just like with RLHF, but RLVR does not use next token prediction and therefore does not require a data set of responses. Instead, the verifier is simply a program that automatically evaluates the output. Okay, that's handy. That's very handy because you don't have to have two data sets. A simple example of such training could be a multi-choice test. So if you collected a set of multiple choice questions and answers and their correct final answer, you could prompt a language model with the questions and then parse its output for the final answer. A data set of math questions and answers could be used similarly. In both cases, your data set doesn't need to complete the response like it would with fine-tuning. You just need to compare the LLM's final answer to the answer key in your data set. This is a key distinction because it allows the model to learn in a sort of trial and error manner. The language model can attempt to solve the same math question many times, but it will only be rewarded when the final answer is correct. The verifier will also reward any intermediate reasoning steps taken to reach the solution, teaching the model to develop strategies that lead to correct answers without explicitly teaching the model how to reason. Hang on one sec. One sec, guys. Be right back. All right, I'm back. This is Peaches. She was whimpering. Face. She was whimpering at the door because I had closed the baby gate. I had to go let her in. She makes the most pathetic little whines ever. Yes, who's your good girl? Okay, come on, Peaches. It's really funny. She doesn't bark. She doesn't whine. She almost squeaks like a squirrel. Let's see. I really like this blog. This one's really cool. Okay, hang on one second. If anybody wants to check this out, because I know some of y'all are AI nerds like me, like actual AI, not like, hey, let's go vibe code a bunch of stuff. One sec. I'm going to drop this up on Discord as well, because this is a really good. Okay. Let's see, we can verify programming challenges as well. So while there isn't an answer key, we can create a set of test cases that must pass with a response to be considered correct, similar to a leak code program. So at this point, you might be wondering, what makes a task verifiable then? So Jason Wei, an OpenAI researcher and contributor to O1, wrote an excellent blog last month on this exact topic.
Hey, no problem, Void. So this is verifier's law. So the ability to train an AI to solve tasks is proportional to whether the task has the following properties. It has to have an objective truth. Everyone agrees what the good solutions are. It is fast to verify. So any given solution can be verified in a few seconds. It's scalable to verify. Many solutions can be verified simultaneously. There's low noise. Verification is as tightly correlated to the solution quality as possible. Let me read that again. Verification is as tightly correlated to the solution quality as possible. Right, because there could be lots of really crappy solutions that still work, but they're not quality solutions, right? Continuous reward. It's easy to rank the goodness of many solutions from a single problem. Okay. And that makes sense. Let's say like the problem was, hey, go sort this huge data set. If it used bubble sort and then some other kind of advanced sort, obviously you'd want to rank bubble sort probably as like the very bottom, right? It's hard to do worse than bubble sort. Let's see. So the tasks don't need all 5 properties to succeed as candidates. So for example, math and multiple choice problems don't usually have a continuous reward, but they have a common facet in most of the RLVR training examples. So there are additional factors such as the size of the model and the complexity of a task that determine how flexible verifier's law can be. Okay, so now to the meat and potatoes, generating evasive shellcode loaders. So for development, seems like a good candidate for the verifier's law. Objective truth. Fewer, lower severity alerts are always better. Sandbox execution without human interaction. So that's fast to verify. Scalable to verify. Cloud compute scales easily. Low noise. Training and evaluation target the same products. And continuous reward. Rewards using alert count and severity. Pretty good. Let's see. So once we can identify the candidate for RLVR, you need a program to evaluate LLM outputs automatically. So before building such a verifier, it's essential to think about the input and output you intend for the LLM. So in this case, I plan to prompt the language model to write a shellcode loader and then compile its output into a PE file for evaluation. Okay, so we tell it, hey, go write a shellcode loader that uses early bird injection. We get a response, we parse it and compile it, and we get our malware sample. Easy. So a model might want to transform the shellcode in some way, though, or to execute other commands to obfuscate the final loader. So as such, I direct the model to use XML format with support for multiple files in a single response. Okay. Well, that's pretty cool. So like a Py file, C++, make file, everything. Very cool. So I always want to have some control over the output. So similar to a traditional shellcode loader framework. So I decided to include bulleted list of features in the prompt as well. To encourage some diversity in responses, I tried to introduce a bit of randomness, like asking for C in some prompts and C++ in others. In addition, I specified some miscellaneous features like API hashing and direct syscalls. So the prompts still have a lot in common, but these slight differences aim to prevent convergence on a single shellcode loader output. So I included my prompt generator in the Hugging Face repository for this project. Well, I'm going to go look at that in a minute. So basically he says, please reason step by step. You're an expert Windows security researcher and malware developer. You've been tasked with evading AV and EDR software. Common APIs, calls, and simple encoding will not be sufficient. No enhancements can be made later. You must provide the best possible solution immediately. Your exact output will be compiled and tested in a Windows environment. Try innovative and creative techniques to evade detection. The code must compile and run without errors. Your output will be evaluated based on functionality and evasion success against leading AV EDR solutions. Very cool. Let's see. You can read the shellcode for your Python script from /shellcode.bin. And so then he gives the final bullet point. So develop a novel shellcode loader that allocates memory using mapped sections, executes shellcode in a remote process with a technique like early bird injection, obfuscates the shellcode with RC4 encryption, uses dynamic API resolution via hash, outputs an XLL, which is a DLL with XL auto open exports, avoids unusual memory protection flags, and includes sandbox checks. Very cool. Fearless. Hey, Chris, what's up, man? So next, I planned a reward function for my verifier. So I included the following elements to implement a continuous reward. So the output format had to be valid XML.
The compilation, shellcode loaders that compiled without errors created the file to create the specified file format. The functionality was loaders that, when executed on a system without AV and EDR, result in a callback on the Cobalt Strike team server and evasion. A fixed reward reduced by each alert based on severity. Nice. I'm digging this. So this allowed the bottle to learn gradually, first focusing on functional loaders, then turning to evasion. So each component also blocks the next reward to prevent reward hacking. So for example, the model could output benign software to get the evasion reward. So I only check evasion if the sample is functional. First, I began building an execution sandbox for the verifier. First two components of my reward function are handled before the sandbox, so allowing for a quicker, earlier training. Where's the sandbox, though? Wait, hold on, let me do this. So I began building an execution sandbox for the verifier. Okay, he's not talking about like an actual I'm thinking sandbox evasion. That's not what he's doing. The first two components of my reward function are handled before the sandbox, allowing for quicker, earlier training. So to properly test evasion, I decided to provision a new virtual machine for each sample dynamically. So the target AV and EDR products get installed into the VM, and then the sample is executed by emulating a double click on the file. The process could take several minutes, so I first evaluated the functionality of the malware in a reusable VM with no security software. The AV and EDR VM starts provisioning while the verifier evaluates functionality, and then the task is canceled if needed. Okay, very cool. Let's see. Elastic Detonate heavily inspired the execution sandbox. So while our use cases are different, the implementations are conceptually very similar. So my implementation, the training script specifies a target AV and EDR for each malware sample. Very cool. Let's see. So I utilized this verifier to train our model, Dante, an open source LLM based on Qwen 2.5 coder, specifically to evade Microsoft Defender for endpoint. So we trained Dante in 2 stages. So we did have what was SFT? Something fine tuning. Qwen coder was trained using chain of thought reasoning with 2 epochs over approximately 53,000 samples from 3 different data sets. The bulk of my dataset comprised challenges from Codeforces, a competitive programming website. Hugging Face used the C++ dataset to train Qwen coder with excellent results, and I wanted Dante to excel at C++ and Python. So I modified both Codeforces datasets to use prompts similar to the one I described earlier. Then I added around 6,000 shellcode loader examples generated by DeepSeek R1 to create the final dataset. So you might suspect Dante learned evasion from memorized examples during SFT, but this would require some of the samples to evade MDE. The shellcode loader examples in my dataset all compiled, but most of them did not function otherwise. So I intentionally excluded the few evasive R1 outputs from the SFT dataset to ensure it learned the capability with reinforcement learning. And this is the kicker here. This is why I'm like, damn, this is crazy. The training stage took 13 hours on 8 H100 GPUs. Ooh. So, if we just do a tiny bit of math here. So it took 8 hours over 8 GPUs. So that is 13 divided by, 13 divided by 8. So that's how many hours per GPU. It takes 1.625. So if we only have 2 of those, right? Actually, let's look at this differently. What's the total GPU hours, which would be 8 times 13. So that's going to give us 104. How many GPU hours we have? So if we only have 2 in there for that like H100 box, you're talking 52 hours. So it'd take over 2 days to train it. Ooh. And that's why it's so hard to go like roll your own model. So I then trained Dante in 455 shellcode loader prompts with 7 generations per prompt. The following graph displays the GRPO reward throughout training. Very good. So there's no apparent plateau. I just decided to stop training at this point due to cost. Yeah, I don't remember how much it is to rent an H100, but I want to say it's a couple dollars per hour. So let's say it was like $2 per hour, and then you're doing that times 8 times 13, right? It's a lot.
That's a lot of hours. Oh, look at this. So the first step, just the SFT step, the fine tuning, took 13 hours on 8 H100s. This training step took 56 hours on 8 of those H100. That's a lot of compute time. So the final results were pretty exciting. So I measured Dante against various generalist models across 4 metrics: compilation functionality, MDE, low alerts, and no alerts. And you can see the following graph how quickly generalist models failed a complex task. Claude 3.7 Sonnet was nearly tied with Dante on the first metric, but quickly fell off after compilation. Following the results of Sonnet, Gemini 2.5 Pro and DeepSeek R1 were the best performing models. So they all scored pretty decently on compilation, but functionality failed hard. And then for low alerts and no alerts, they didn't do a great job. And even then, look at this, after this specialized training, the best he got was, let's say we got to all the way to the fine tuning, it was only about 7%, maybe 8%. Like, that's a big difference. While Dante only completely evades MDE more than 8% of the time, it costs a fraction of a cent to generate shellcode loaders with such a small model. So generating multiple compilations or multiple completions with the same prompt significantly increases reliability. So as the graph below illustrates, performance improved substantially when I generated 8 completions per prompt. Reliability likely increases with additional training too, though I don't plan to continue training this model. And that makes sense, because think about it. It's essentially a probability game at this point. You got about an 8% chance to get one that passes. So if you have 8, or let's say it generates no alerts. So if you have 8 of these, right, your probability is basically going to become 8 times 8, which is like 64% as you kind of come up through this. Or at least you have a 64% probability of getting one that didn't get it in here. Although he actually was experiencing like 30%. I would have expected this to be a little bit higher just based on the probabilities of it. So you can try out Dante 7B on Hugging Face for free, and you can run the model yourself in our example code. Nice. Okay. That's pretty sick. I like this. So my training code extended OpenR1 with the AV and EDR verifiers and rewards functions. I don't plan to release the code, but I recommend that anyone interested in training specialist models use the same framework. Okay, I gotta take a look at OpenR1 too. So low-cost models can outperform large generalist models. That makes sense. The RLVR does not require a traditional data set, for example. So just in case it wasn't clear, I didn't write a single shellcode loader for this project. Dante never saw private outflank code or anything I wrote myself. Its success is entirely due to the original training data used to create Quinn Coder and the model's trial and error in our verifier environment. Practically speaking, this means anyone could train a model to evade an AV and EDR without knowing how to evade the product themselves. As detection capabilities grow more sophisticated, an automated approach may become necessary to keep up with endpoint security vendors. Now that's really interesting because if you think about it, he only trained this against MDE, which is fairly free and easy to get. If you extended this even more, you're talking like a bigger data set and a lot of training time for something else. Because he spent, essentially, let me bring the calculator back up. This was 104 hours, right? So 8 times 13. 104 hours just doing the first step. And then that was another 56 times 8. So basically, he was doing this whole thing for 52 GPU hours. So if I tried to do this at home, you're talking like with that DGS Spark system, you're talking 276 hours to do this. So you're coming up at like almost 2 weeks to train this model. And that's like just against MDE, right? Doesn't include like, what if you had CrowdStrike? What if you had Sentinel-1? You know, what if you had some other system in there? That's a lot of compute time. Super interesting, though. I really liked what he was doing here. All right. We got time to hit another article, so let's go do that real quick because I really want to see what else we've got going on in here. That was a super interesting article, though. Oh, I kind of want to read that. This is from DEF CON 33, turning Microsoft's login page into our phishing infrastructure. What? What? Yeah, Void, that would be super useful, especially if you could get a little bit better information. Oh, dang it, this is the video for it. All right, I'm not gonna sit here and run through the entire talk of the video because I feel like it's a little bit disrespectful. But there's the link to it. I'm curious to see like what he was doing on this. Yeah, I'll save that for later. I want to run through that. Let's look at the tools and exploits real quick before anybody else is coming through here. Let's see. NIM impersonate. So you can impersonate Windows tokens in NIM. This was something funny from VX Underground over on Twitter. Meow meow, kitty cat, meow meow. And basically it was, you could insert and hide your payload in a bitmap for this. Hang on 1 second, Deep. Let me grab this real quick. There you go, Depot. If you want to hop into the Discord, there's the link for it. Ooh, what is this? Ludus Bad Blood. Outfits your Ludus AD domain with bad blood info. Oh, nice. Very cool. Let me take a quick look at this. I'm always up for some good Ludus fun. I wonder if this just drops it into the Active Directory domain. I bet that's what it's doing. Because if you're not familiar with Bad Blood, this is a repository for basically uploading and creating like a vulnerable Active Directory. Not really vulnerable, but it puts a lot of information there that you can use to go check out stuff like Bloodhound. So it's a pretty cool tool. I don't think it actually makes the machine accounts, if I remember correctly. Let's see. I'm trying to remember for Bad Blood. I think it looks like it does. Okay. That's pretty cool. Okay, that's a handy one. Especially if you wanted to split up like a really vulnerable Active Directory lab in there. Ooh, what is this? Azure App Hunter, open source tool for creating for security researchers, red teamers and defenders to help identify excessive permissions assigned to service principals. Oh. This is very timely because that's what I was just doing out at Seattle. I was there for some Azure offensive security training. Identify overprivileged enterprise applications during a security review, map potential escalation paths via service principals assigned to sensitive graph permissions, support purple teaming by highlighting Azure misconfigurations. Well, it says Azure AD, it's really Entra now. Let's see. Understand third-party apps in hybrid cloud developments. Very cool. I wish you had some better like explanations of this. So essentially, whenever you install an app into Entra ID, what happens is you create a service principal along with that, and the service principal is what actually holds the permissions for everything the app is going to do on behalf of a user. So the user, let's say you install the app, the user logs into the app. That service principal that's in your tenant then gets delegated the permissions as the user to be able to go do stuff, if I'm understanding it correctly. But that's kind of a neat tool. I could use that. Oh, this is interesting. So a tool designed for smuggling interactive command and control traffic through a Turn server hosted by reputable providers like Zoom. Turnt. Love the name too. Turnt. See, who wrote this? I'm not familiar with Praetorian ink. Okay. Apparently they're based out of Austin, but I've not heard of these guys. So Turnt allows operators to tunnel interactive command and control traffic, such as hidden VNC and SOX traffic over legitimate meeting protocols used for web conferencing. I actually had a coworker that did something like this. Interesting. I actually was wondering if it was him whenever it came up. But basically, it's usually something like turn and stun, which you'd use for like NAT traversal and for real-time communications on the internet, and basically re-weaponizing that for C2 traffic. Let's see. Ooh, what is this? Oath Seeker, or OAuth Seeker. Malicious OAuth application that can be leveraged for both internal and external phishing attacks targeting Azure and Office 365. Well, I always like a new way to target users. Red Team tool for performing phishing attacks. What do we got here? Let's see. So this can perform OAuth phishing attacks targeting Microsoft Azure and Office 365 users to gain access to the Graph API and Azure resources. Nice. So one of the things that you have to kind of be aware of with these is that you have to just know which, and it's probably already controlled in this repository, but you have to be aware of which permissions you're actually trying to phish from the user, because some of them can be what's called delegated, so you can hand them off, and other ones are more restricted, and you actually have to have an administrator then go install the app into your tenant. That's where it creates that service principal and does all that good jazz for it. This is handy though, automated token refresh. So every time you get one of those tokens from Azure, you're also getting a refresh token that you can use to re-up your token every single time. I love that this is a key feature. Ability to reskin the user interface front end. Oh, okay, hold on. I misunderstood this. I thought this was like reskinning the operator interface. No, this is reskinning it to match like if you're trying to impersonate something. Gotcha. Let's see. So it provides an admin panel where operators can view collected credentials, refresh the access tokens, and use the Graph API through an embedded instance of Graph Runner. Oh, that's very cool. You can also explore individual credentials, refresh the access tokens as needed to maintain access to those Graph resources. Yeah, you just said that, man. I mean, this, I'm pretty sure was... I think you already said that. Let's see. So the built-in Graph Runner interface simplifies navigation to OneDrive, SharePoint, Teams, and Outlook, and can be accessed by the Graph Runner tab. Oh, this is pretty cool. I need to go play with this. I can't believe I've never run across Graph Runner. That's a post-exploitation toolkit for Microsoft 365. It allows attackers to leverage authenticated access to the Graph API. If you're not familiar with the Graph API is, it's the main API that kind of runs everything in the background, really, for Microsoft, and you can access just about everything. So getting access to the Graph API allows you to do a lot of stuff against a user. What about Graph Spy? This. So it enables streamlined access to OneDrive, SharePoint, Outlook, supporting device code phishing and concurrent code polling. Okay. Very cool. Hold on, I gotta save this one. It's really cool. Put this into Azure Cloud Tools. Actually, I want to go save this Turnt one also, because that looks pretty cool. We're gonna save this over into the Red Team stuff. By the way, if you guys want to see these lists on here, they're open and available. If you go over to the BlaiseBits GitHub and go to stars right here, you'll see the full list right here. So I'm trying to like kind of curate some of these really interesting repositories by their topic in here. So for example, malware development, hacking labs, stuff that I want to implement over in Mythic. But Red Team, Azure Cloud Tools, those are kind of the biggies in there. I guess Maldev actually has a ton. Wow. I didn't realize I had so many repos in there. Let's see, what else do we got? Ooh, what is this? A GitLab attack toolkit. Not to be confused with Gato, which is GitHub Actions pipeline enumeration. Glato. Another one from Praetorian. Okay. Gelato, pronounced gelato. Nope, that's gelato. Is a GitLab attack toolkit. It enumerates attack surfaces that allows blue teamers and offensive security practitioners to identify, exploit pipeline vulnerabilities within GitLab's instances, public and private repositories. Ooh, very nice. I'm always up for anything that lets me go pwn CI/CDs. including GitLab, because I usually get a lot of good stuff out of those. Oh, what is this? Chrome Alone, a tool to transform Chromium browsers into a C2 implant. All right. Now you have my attention, sir. What are these file names? Paint bucket, Hot Wheels, doorknob, blowtorch, battle plan. What is this? Okay, you're really leaning into the Home Alone meme, and I'm here for it. So this is a browser implant that could be used in place of conventional implants like Cobalt Strike or Interpreter. Really? That was what you want to compare to? Interpreter? Anyway. The repo provides a simple build process that will generate a management console, deploy infrastructure, and create a PowerShell sideloader script to run on the target. So after installation, Chrome Alone implant will provide mechanisms for SOX proxying, TCP traffic, browser session stealing, and credential capture. Oh yeah, because it's probably running as an extension, so that makes a lot of sense. Launching executables on the host from Chrome. Phishing for WebAuthn requests or physical security tokens, and an EDR-resistant form of persistence on host. Very cool. So you can deploy it up to AWS if you want to. What are the operating instructions? Look at this. So it's once Chrome Alone is loaded, you can view any connected host by opening the index.html. This web app comes pre-configured to connect back to the deployed battle plan instance. These names crack me up. By default, the relay is firewall to only coming from the incoming control ports from the IP of the deployed server, so basically localhost. So if you wish to modify this, you can. Most commands can be run by the web UI, so you can dump the history, capture credentials. You can also execute shell commands. The primary exception is the SOX proxying. Each infected host is assigned a unique SOX proxy port for the server that can be seen under agent information section. So where each agent has a port field. So the assigned port, when combined with the admin credentials stored in the config.js, can be used to configure a host as a specific SOX proxy. Okay, I like that idea. So basically every time, like, let's say you had 20 of these little agents running on a system, you're going to have like 20 different SOX proxies running. I do like that idea. This is pretty cool. Let's see. So what's in the repository? So Chrome Alone is broken down into components, many of which could be used individually as part of an assessment, but together they represent the entire Chromium browser implant. Good. I'm looking forward to these explanations of the names. So Battle Plan. This is the management server component of the toolchain. Contains Terraform scripts for deploying to AWS and HTML client for interacting. Blowtorch is the malicious isolated web app which uses direct socket permissions to implement a SOX TCP proxy. Nice. Also acts as a messaging bridge back to the Battle Plan server. Doorknob is a series of scripts for generating PowerShell side loaders for isolated web apps and Chromium extensions. Weird name. Anyway, what about Hot Wheels? This is the malicious Chrome extension that implements all the capabilities in the WebAssembly. Oh, nice. They're using WebAssembly. I love it. So it provides the vast majority of Chrome Alone's feature sets for capture, credential capture, session hijacking, shelling out. So one of the things I could see that this would be a really cool post-exploitation move. You stand up this server, you get onto a system. There's ways where you can sideload, let's say like Chrome, Chrome extensions into the browser. So you sideload this, you let it just kind of silently hang out in the browser, and then bam, you just start capturing all the sessions and whatnot. What about Paint Bucket? Series of content scripts that enables phishing for WebAuthn requests by hiding additional web requests within iframes inactive tabs whenever the normal request is made. Okay. Well, that's pretty cool. Hold on, I gotta save that one. I do like this. We're gonna put this over in. This definitely gotta go into Red Team. Good stuff. I like that. I'm gonna actually send this to a buddy of mine because he has been working on a lot of phishing stuff. What else we got here? GPO parser is a tool designed to extract and analyze configurations applied through group policy objects. I would actually really like to see this because I had one pen test recently where GPO abuse was the only thing we could do, and the toolkits available were rather sparse. And we actually had to do some reverse engineering on it to figure out what it was doing because it was weird. It was like clobbering the XML in the way it was constructing it. It wasn't that fun. So this is a tool designed to extract and analyze configurations applied through GPOs in Active Directory. Since enumerating these settings can be tedious and time-consuming, this tool provides a clearer understanding of applied policies, helps identify dangerous configurations that could enable lateral movement or privilege escalation. Let's see. So dependencies needed for the GSS API package. In this, you gotta install that. Okay. So we can also parse local GPOs, remote. We can enrich it. Ooh, enrich Bloodhound with new edges? Oh, what? How are you doing this? Okay, Peaches. I think the kids have been sneaking her treats because I think she was about to throw up on the carpet again. She did that last week. Just right before I was getting ready to leave for Seattle. I'm sitting over, my work computer's right next to this one, and she just walks over and just goes, bleh. I'm like, oh no. Right on the carpet. Hold on, I want to see what this Bloodhound enrichment's doing. This parses GPO information to create additional edges such as the admin2, can RDP, and can PS remote, identifying lateral movement opportunities that Bloodhound may not detect natively. Ooh. So edges are added by connecting directly to the Do4J database. Okay. That's very cool. So what they're saying is if you can detect that you're going to have these permissions because of a group policy object, then it might go drop them in there. Okay. Although I think if you're running something like Bloodhound Enterprise, I think it would be redundant data, but this would be super helpful for Bloodhound Community Edition. Because a lot of times when you're doing Bloodhound Community Edition, you're not doing like host collection. So a lot of people don't realize this, but because we usually just dump all this data out of Active Directory, like from the domain controller. But you can actually have the Bloodhound collectors go and log into each host and collect local host information for enriching the graph further. One of those being like, do you have a particular sessions for a user on a computer? And that's usually one of the things I like to look for whenever I'm looking through BHE. Very cool. I do like this one too. I'm going to save this because there's not enough good stuff around group policy tradecraft. A lot of it's like, yeah, you can do this, but it's left up as an exercise to the reader. What's this one? Restless Guest. I just like the name. I want to see what it is. This is a CLI toolkit for Restless Guest exploits. Let's see. Explains core security model and play Evil V in part 2. Oh, is this what is Restless Guest? I haven't seen this. Hold on. So Beyond Trust researchers discovered that Entra guest users with the right billing roles can create subscriptions and become owners. Uh-oh. So without any explicit permissions on the target tenant, this blog unpacks how attackers could abuse this by design behavior to pivot, persist, and potentially escalate privileges inside an Entra environment. Oh, nice. Okay, I'm gonna have to read up more on this, especially considering I am so excited. I can't explain to you guys how excited I am about the specialty agents for Hackbot, because I got some really cool ideas around that, particularly around the knowledge base and chat interface idea, where you could have this entire fleet of specialists just ready to have lots of information at their fingertips where they can come provide information. Ooh. It's basically like having all your notes dumped into a language model that specifically understands like each of those topics. I can't wait. I cannot wait. This is the way. I've seen this before, but actually let's look at it again. Entra-Goat, deliberately vulnerable Microsoft Entra ID environment. And this is actually probably really handy for some of the stuff that I was thinking about doing with Hackbot, where eventually I did want to add some stuff around Azure and Entra to it, add specialty agents for it. So this is a deliberately vulnerable Entra ID infrastructure designed to simulate real-world identity, security misconfigurations, and attack vectors. Entra introduces intentional vulnerabilities into your environment to provide realistic learning platform for security professionals. So don't put this into prod, y'all. Put it into a dev instance. So it features multiple privilege escalation paths and focuses on black box attack methodologies. Uses PowerShell scripts and the Microsoft Graph API to deploy vulnerable configurations in your Entra ID tenant. This gives users complete control over the learning environment while maintaining isolation from production systems. Nice. Actually, you know what I just realized? Because of the way the agent's system is architected, I just realized something actually. Here, check the, let me look at this real quick. So this is kind of the way that I've been structuring the specialty agents, right? Here, let me erase this. This was earlier today. Because as I'm thinking about this, all these repositories are giving me ideas, right? So in the agents, we've got a mapping where we say, hey, by the way, this is the agent. Here's the graph object. Here's the agent list of what it can be mapped to. For Entra, we could even do something like this. So let's say we had like a, let's say we had like an Entra special agent. So we could even have like an Entra recon, right? And that agent is specialized in going through and like doing reconnaissance against Entra, or it could also be like an enum agent, whatever. Let's see, enumeration. But then also we could actually have a second one in here that could be like an Entra. I don't know if an exploit, maybe a post exploit, but basically one that's actually technically really it would be like a post-ex in here. But it'd be something like a priv-esque agent. So even though these are both working on like the same data set, you could actually have these split out for different tasks, and these could be presented as different special agents inside of one repository. Nice. I can't wait. Can't wait. Anyway, this is a really cool lab, and I'm going to see if I can get me another developer instance. I used to have one, but I think Microsoft took it away. I got to see if I can get another one. Here, if for some of y'all, I know y'all are working in different environments, but that's the link to it right there. All right, let's see what else we got here. Let's take a look at one more before we call it a night here. Okay, last one, because I think this is going to become a lot more prevalent in a lot of enterprise environments. And that is JAMFhound. Oh, of course, it's from Spectre Ops in here. So, but JAMFhound is a Python 3 project designed to collect an identity attack paths in Jamf Pro tenants based on existing object permissions. So when you run scripts, when run, the script creates a JSON object file that can be imported over into Bloodhound and populate custom nodes such as Jamf accounts for computers and display. So if you're not familiar with Jamf, I forget what it stands for, but you can almost think of it a little bit like SCCM, but for Mac. And so there's a lot more, let's say, like cloud native companies, and they're using a lot more Macs because of that. They're not necessarily tied over to like Windows AD, and Microsoft doesn't really require that for something like Azure or Entra. So I know from my team, we're seeing a lot more Mac stuff kind of come up in environments. So this would be super handy for something like that. Let's see, JAMFhound can perform collections against both cloud-hosted and on-site Jamf Pro instances using some known credentials. Users are recommended to provision an auditor account for it, though. Like, what are some of the edges we got here? So, like, Jamf contains enroll, admin to a site. We have group administrators and extensions. Very cool. I'm always up for some interesting Mac stuff. Okay, hold on. I take it back. We're gonna look at one more real quick before we wrap up for tonight. What is this? Azure Strike. Let's see. This is an HTA-based application designed to simulate Azure and Entra scenarios for red team simulations and adversary training. So the goal of the project is to provide lightweight and interactive way to practice offensive techniques against Azure environments in a controlled lab setup. What? I hate to say it, but I'm forgetting what HTA stands for. Oh, it's just HTML application. Okay. Let's see. So the application provides a simple run scenario button that will trigger a PowerShell script placed in the directory. Each script builds a unique scenario modeled after a ruled attack methodology that are commonly seen in red team engagements. Some of these are based on research and hands-on work replicating techniques from training courses. I've personally taken to understanding the Azure technologies. Technologies was important before I implemented them. Tool leverages the Connect AZ's account and Connect MG Graph, the Azure CLI, and a couple other functions to deploy vulnerable functions into Azure. Oh, very cool. Awesome. I like this one. Yeah, I'm going to save this one too. I'm glad there's more stuff coming out for stuff like Azure training environments, because I think that's the one thing that holds a lot of people back from understanding it so they can go kind of develop their tradecraft around that. All right. I think that is about it for tonight. So let's go find us a fun stream to go raid over to. Let's see. By the way, if anybody over on the Twitch side has a raid suggestion, feel free to shout them out. Let's go see what we can find real quick. Let's see. Oh, Sid's on. What's he doing? Doing some electronics repair. Also got Braithwaite on. He's doing some fun stuff. Hey, Pay Short, what's up, man? Welcome in. Unfortunately, we were about to wrap up short. We were trying to find somebody to raid out to. Unfortunately, it is about that time. We're after 11 o'clock Central, and every minute I go past is a 1% increase in aggro probability from my wife. I know, man. Dude, I'll be back on Saturday, though. Tuesday nights, we'll do in Hacker News, and then Saturdays and Sundays, working on Hackbot and building that up. It's a AI hacking bot to go play CTFs. Have some fun with it. Get some coding practice, stuff like that. Let's go see who's over in Science and Tech right now, actually. Hey, Zen, what's up? A wifey denial of sanity attack? Not really. She keeps me pretty sane. She helps out a ton. Let's see. Let's see who this person is. What is it? Roll for Dex. Oh, you were saying roll for Dex because of aggro. Duh. Roll for initiative. Let's see. What is this person working on? Supposedly working on something, but they're just chatting right now. Oh, you know what? I know it. Science is on. We're going to go raid the Science stream. They tinker with stuff. They're always good for a nice, chill, learning something stream. So we're going to go raid over to them. All right, guys. Unfortunately, that is where I've got to end it. Everyone, take care. Tomorrow's hump day. Keep kicking it with this week. Do not let up. The beating of the week will continue until Friday, and then it's read-only mode. Do not push to production on Friday if you value your weekend, and I know you all do. Yeah. Dan, you have a good night, man. Everybody, y'all have a fantastic night. Thanks for coming to hang out. Lots of fun news for this week. It's a lot of crazy stuff happening. I think hopefully Saturday, maybe Sunday, we'll wrap up the special agents on Hackbot, and we'll get back to that. And then we're just going to get back into our normal stream schedule. Beatbox. I suck at beatboxing, I'm just going to be honest with you. But everyone, y'all take care. I think y'all are going to have an amazing rest of your week. Keep strong. Don't let the weakness get the better of you. And I want y'all to remember one very, very, very important thing, and that is, I love you. Peace.